same thing as well.
Can you just watch for like the participants,
Yeah,
and then if anyone's in the waiting room,
yeah.
you should be able to let them in. I'll look too, but. All right. All right, it's Thursday, February 5th, just after 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the Lunenburg Finance Committee meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. The meeting is in person, and there is a Zoom link provided for convenience. If anyone wants to join the Zoom link, you can go to lunenburgma.gov, and under our agenda, you can find the link to it. There's also a toll-free phone number that can be used to call in. And with that, if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so tonight sort of starts what we affectionately call budget season. We're going to do things slightly differently than prior years, which hopefully will work out better. So for tonight, we do have Monty Tech here. We usually bring in Monty Tech after they've voted on their budget. I would like to have them up front, so at least maybe we can influence it a little bit, maybe have a discussion before things are finalized and voted upon. And then we also have Stormwater Task Force here to discuss the stormwater utility. So this will be potentially a warrant article to establish a stormwater utility this year, so we'll go through that discussion with them. We'll also have an initial town manager's capital plan. It is initial at this point, as we still don't have free cash certified, so we don't know everything on the funding side of it, but it does reflect what the capital planning committee has discussed. We will also have potentially some discussions following our tri-board meetings amongst us on this committee on the Proposition 2.5 override that is being discussed. No decisions yet, but being discussed. Any tri-board discussions we want to have as a group. I do have town manager and finance director report earlier in the agenda, but we are going to do that a little later so that we can get the guests in and out and they don't have to be here as late as all of us. So with that, is there any public comment from the public? All right, is there any public comment from the committee? All right, with that, the first up is Montechusett Regional Voc Tech School Budget, and I will pull up their presentation. And I will turn it over to you.
Okay. Good evening, folks. My name's Tom Brown, Superintendent of Monty Tech. Very pleased to be here. I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful business manager, Tammy Crockett. We're very happy to be here and happy to be it sounds like we're the first ones coming up for budget season. So
That's right.
We'll take that. All right. So I'm going to go through a quick update on some of the things happening at Monty Tech, the status of Monty Tech, trying to get through that. And then, as always, Tammy will then walk everybody directly through the proposed budget. That at this point, we have presented to our Finance Committee, and then we'll be wrapping up later on in the season. But very quickly, I'm going to assume that we're up on the screen, or we're going to be up on the screen for the PowerPoint. But anyhow, so Monty Tech, we just gave everybody, as always, some of the demographic data of where we stand with some of our students in terms of enrollment by race and ethnicity, special populations, certainly taking a look at that. We did see a significant growth for our English language learners, up to 22. Keeping in mind that we have multiple towns that come to us that have literally 0 ELL students. So we've increased on that, increased on low income, and high needs at about 38% to be rounded up. Gender continues to kind of go back and forth. For a while, we were pretty equal there. But in general, it does tend towards the males usually. And then you can see the enrollments for the different towns, with Lunenburg at 97 as of October 1. Next slide just kind of shows, as always, our 21 programs. Very proud of them. Freshmen just got assigned to shops. The only what I would say is, unsurprisingly, right now, our hard trades, our construction trades, everybody wants them. They know that's good money in those trades, and so it's very competitive. But we appreciate all the freshmen's effort as they try to get to the programs. What we're really here when we try to talk about is to make sure they emphasize the steps that Monty Tech tries to take to keep the budget, at a controlled number. So, we gave you a quick list there that has all the, the per pupil expenditures for all the vocational schools across the Commonwealth. And as you can see, Monty Tech comes in at 28 out of the 32, I believe. So it's clear that we try to spend within our means, try not to affect the towns. What we counter that with is the fact that we have a wonderful grant writer and a team that seeks those instructors that work with those grant writers. Last year, as you can see, we had a record-breaking year, $3.6 million that we pulled in on grants to help support. And you can see the list of some of the focus of some of those grants as well, but very proud of that effort. And then the following slide after that, you can see this is just an example of some of the equipment and renovation efforts. So using Perkins grant money, we replaced all the cosmetology furnishings in terms of the chairs for all our cosmetology students. We renovated our engineering lab, which really gave it an uplift, really looks great. Culinary got several new ovens. That's a wonderful stone pizza oven that they brought in for the culinary program. One of the big efforts on the bottom left there, the auto body spray booth. That was really an amalgam of not just grants but donations as well. But we were very proud of the fact that we were able to exchange. We had basically had the original spray booth in the building that we were able to move. We used the remaining ESSER funds to get 2 new rooftop units on the building. And then, again, through a donation, a anonymous donation, we're able to get these heavy equipment simulators, which are incredibly awesome. As you know, heavy equipment operators are in huge demand right now. And we literally can have kids sit down, and it is as if they are driving the entire thing right on the work site. So it's a very great piece of equipment. Instructional technology that our students get to benefit from. Quickly, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but we've been coming up here the last couple of years talking about MVP Academy. Again, this is the model that we're having, that trying to get more students to have access to workforce training with adults as well. This is our satellite campus that we have down the road, that we have students who are enrolled in other school districts come and do the workforce training. We're really proud of it. We had our first class graduate last April, just about April 30th. Earlier this year, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll came out to visit us during STEM Week. During that, so we're already off to a good start in terms of grants, let us know that we had earned a $500,000 grant, capital skills grant for plumbing program. So very pleased with that. And then most recently, the North Central Mass Chamber of Commerce recognized Monty Tech for a Community Enhancement Award. Again, what we had done was converted a not abandoned, but a vacant warehouse into a full, up-to-date workforce training center. Again, we have students, secondary students during the day, adults at night, and for that, we got recognized by the chamber, and we really appreciated that. One of the things that Tammy will be talking a little bit more about that we certainly wanted to make everybody know and be aware of, last April, last year, just prior to the spring outdoor track season, the MIA stopped by and they took a look at our track and they deemed it unusable. They said there were too many structural issues, gaps in the track, and unfortunately that meant for the rest of that season we had to do away meets all the way through. But we knew we had to address it if we were going to try to get a track. And one of the things we also looked at was we literally had the original bleachers from when the building was first built. And needless to say, there were graduations that time that I looked up at those bleachers and shook my head with nervousness. So we decided if we were going to have to redo the track, we might as well do the bleacher at the same time. You can see what is currently kind of the draft budget for the project. We're working with a municipal financer, to make that happen. We have been working with Gale Engineering that's helping us take care of this project and everything else. But we will be going through a tax-exempt municipal lease to do the renovations. You can see the steps that we've already completed. We're out to bid right now. Those bids close February 24th. And we'll be looking to, identify and choose the contractor who will be doing the work and everything else. But that's obviously a major piece, and like I said, Tammy will talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Just wanted to make sure everybody, last year we updated that it looked like we were going towards the lottery. We are officially in a lottery now for admission. In fact, applications are due March 1st. Application out basically is if you just fill out the opening page, you say where you live, so we can make sure you are truly a resident in one of our towns, and that gets them into the lottery. The older standards aren't a piece of that or anything. The quotas did stay in place. The state allowed those to stay in place, so we'll still be going through that system, which is really important because that means that basically towns can know where they're going to be falling based on the quota. I gave you an example of that. That's technically last year's numbers, but you can see basically where Lunenburg would be falling. This typically around mid-20s for students and everything for the incoming freshman class. So we just want to make sure everybody knew about that. Obviously, our postgraduate plans are always very important to us, so I've been sharing those the last couple of years. You can see the shops. There's always questions, as we said, about kids going out to college, but as I always say, a lot of these are programs where the kids, the one right at the top there, animal science, those students, when they graduate, they can be a vet assistant to help, but if they want to be a vet tech, they need to go on to college. They have to. But you can just get a sense of where we have for our kids going for different programs. Can't say enough about our adult learning program, continuing ed. The big program that goes for that is CTI, which is the Career Technical Initiative, which is no-cost training for adults who are underemployed or unemployed. And you can see that we have had dozens of folks going through those programs, electrical, plumbing, welding, automotive has been going on for both CTI and for what's the Conley Workforce Success Grants. You can see where we have some of our current ones with culinary and everything else, but the sheer number of folks that we have going through this program, again, becoming workforce ready, moving out is just wonderful, and we're really proud of our continuing education program. We're really thankful for our regional employer partners. As you can see, we've had the last couple of years setting records for the number of kids out on co-op, which means they are going into the workforce instead of going to shop during their shop weeks. They're working for a local company. They get paid to do that work. They love it, and they're learning how to be a true professional in the workforce. We hope to be breaking our record of 288, which means we're getting near 300. And again, that's seniors and that are eligible, and just this past week, as of the semester break, juniors are eligible to go out as well. So numbers should be going up a little bit. I always remind everybody that we love to do work for the towns. Gave everybody a listing there of some of the opportunities that we've been able to work with some of the other communities and everything else. And certainly, as always, town manager or finance committee even, I gave you the information for Brian Williams, our vocational director down there on the PowerPoint. So if you want to look into some of that, certainly reach out. And then I just want to make sure that besides the work that we do for the towns, that might be construction or renovation, we always try to support the towns in other ways as well, and the families and the communities of that. And certainly last fall, when there was the issue with the SNAP benefits and there were certain concerns, we do have a pantry at the school that we call the Nook. That we receive donations for. We open that up to students and families. It's all done confidentially, so they don't have to be seen by people going in or out, because obviously there's some social pressure there. But then we made sure in the top right there to send out food pantries for those communities so they knew what was available in their own communities and towns back there. So we continue to have that support. We appreciate everything that we get from Lunenburg and the students that come from Lunenburg. So we're thankful for that. I just want to give you that quick update, and I'll turn it over to Tammy.
I say Tom always gets the fun part, and it gets to me. Ugh. Feels like we were just here.
There's nothing more fun than budget.
I also want to point out that Lunenburg's representative to Monty Tech is here with us tonight, Stephanie Quinn. She is actually hearing this budget presentation for the first time as well, because we just started last night with finance, so everybody's on the same page. As you guys know, you're familiar with my presentations. I always pretty much start with what's going on at the state level, because that's what drives most of Monty Tech's budget, is what our state requirements are and the requirements of our towns. So I thought the biggest piece of Monty Tech's budget is the foundation budget. So I wanted to start off by showing you what the foundation budget rates look like for FY27. Now, these rates get increased every year by the inflationary rate, which I have at the bottom of the PowerPoint. This year was 2.76%. Under what's called the Student Opportunity Act, which is in its final year in FY27, the state is funding some of these categories. You see categories across the top: administration, instructional equipment, etc. They're funding some of those slightly above the inflationary rates, and those are really your guidance and psychological, pupil services, special ed tuition, and also employee benefits and fixed charges, because as we all know, the inflationary rate doesn't necessarily keep up with what health insurance rates and increases look like. So I also showed you at the bottom that the employee benefits increased by a rate of 8.29%. So when I say that, the rates you see in each column, that's what I'm referring to. Going down the left, 1 through 24, those start out with your different categories of school-age students. So I've highlighted where you'll see Monty Tech. We fall under row 7, which is vocational. So if you go all the way to the right, the total base, this is what we call base, is $18,046.96 per student. So that's going to be the base of our foundation per student. The next category that affects Monty Tech is the special ed in-district rates. That is what they call above base. So they add, you can see the 33,000 per pupil for an assumed percentage of students that we'll see on the next slide. Also, row 12 affects us, the English learners for high school vocational. So above that base, they give us an additional $39.8377 towards those pupils. And then in the low-income groups, Monty Tech falls into low-income group 6, so we're row 18. And you can see the total above base is a total of $6,003.10 per pupil. So this is kind of the foundation. The next slide shows you how these rates affect Monty Tech specifically. So you can see we have 1,465 students in our foundation enrollment. So they multiply that number by that base number from the previous slide of the $18,046, and that's where you get that 26 million. The numbers from columns 8 through 13 are what they call above base. So the student counts are duplicative in these columns, so they're part of that 1465, but they give you additional money for special care categories. So you can see special ed, it shows 73. I point this out each time I present. This is an assumed percentage. And when you look in the lower left column, you can kind of see the legend. And for vocational enrollment, the assumed percentage of special ed students is 4.97%. So that's where they get the 73, because we have far more students, special ed students than that, 220 or 25 this year. But that's what they do for all districts. They give you an assumed percentage. And for those pupils, we get that additional $33,000 per student that we saw on the previous slide. We don't have any students in columns 9 through 11, but in column 12, we have 22 English learners this year. That's our actual population. So from the previous slide, we get an additional $39.83 for those students. And then we jump over to column 13, which is low income. I told you we're in group 6. You can see in the kind of lower left, we have 32.79% is our low income percentage. So for that group, we get an additional $6,000 per pupil. All those tallied up to the right, it gives us a total foundation budget number of $31,714,794. And when you divide that out per the 1465, we have a foundation budget per pupil of $21,648. That you're going to see is really the basis of Monty Tech's budget. So that's why I'd like to spend some time on that. The next big component with the governor's budget is the Chapter 70. In FY27, in the governor's budget, you can see they're budgeting at the $7 billion, $242 million increase over 26. And what this year's formula is geared to do is they have 3 what they call specified targets. That the state target local contribution is 59%, effort reduction is 100%, and minimum aid is $75 per pupil. You'll see that play out on other slides. The next slide shows you how the Chapter 70 formula affects Monty Tech for FY27. So you can see in row 1 what our current FY26 Chapter 70 is. It's that 18,762,805. Row 2 is the foundation budget for FY27. On the previous slide, I just showed you how that was calculated out by the rates and the numbers in each column. So that's where that 31.7 million comes in. Our required district contribution, that's all 18 communities, what the required minimum contribution is that the state has calculated from all 18 is 12.9 million. Again, you'll see that play out. Subtracting those, the state calculates our foundation aid should be $18,790,979. Well, that's an increase over FY26 of only $28,000. The state, in their formula this year, said that they're going to guarantee every municipality at least a $75 increase in Chapter 70 per pupil. So you can see that in row 6. So for us, that would be $109,000. Well, our increase from row 5 is less than that. So the state's saying we're going to give you an additional above what we're going to give you by $81,701. What that is called is hold harmless. That means they're not going to give us less in Chapter 70 in toll this year, or they're not going to give us less than the $75 per pupil. If you look to the left in the margin, 271 districts this year are only receiving the minimum aid increase, which is not a lot. So that gives us our Chapter 70 for FY27 in row 8, 18,872,680. The next slide shows you analysis or comparison of how that plays out. So in comparison, our foundation enrollment for FY27 is 1465, which is a decrease of 23 students. Now, I want to remind you, because in your head, you're thinking Superintendent Brown showed us on the first page of his slide 1,403 students. Yes, those are the students actually in Monty Tech. Foundation enrollment takes into account that the students who are enrolled at Monty Tech from our 18 member districts, the students who reside in our 18 member districts, that school choice to other vocational schools, as well as we have a Chapter 74 approved practical nursing post-secondary program that gets counted in for the pupils that live in our community towns. So all those three categories combined makes up that 1465. We saw the foundation budget, 31.7, and how it was calculated. So you can see that's an increase of $724,380. Unfortunately, when you get to the next line, you see that the increase to our net school spending and foundation budget, once again, is coming on the backs of our communities because the required district contribution increases in total by $696,206, which we're going to talk about. Chapter 70, I just showed you how it is calculated. So that's our Chapter 70 number. In our net school spending for this year, FY27, $31,796,495, which is an increase of $806,081. Normally, required net school spending would match your foundation budget, but when you're in a hold harmless situation and you're getting more Chapter 70, like they're not decreasing it, or you're getting the minimum $75 per pupil increase, the state says you will spend that. So that's why that number is slightly higher by the additional Chapter 70 than the foundation budget number. The next largest component of our budget is the required contributions that come from our municipalities. Each year, I talk to you about how that formula is derived. So I thought I would show you the slide that the state puts out on how they calculate it. So you can see the state starts out with what is the statewide foundation budget, which is the $15.8 billion. That's all the schools in the state foundation budgets. The next shows you how much the state is going to put in state aid and how much is going to come from local contributions. So the state aid is determined by what is appropriated in that year's budget for Chapter 70. And then they have to take the difference, local contributions. The third category is how does the state determine how the community's local contribution is going to be calculated? Well, the state wants half to come from income of the town residents and half from property values of the town. So you can see, to come up with the $9.34 billion, the state has determined that 1.5897% is going to be the income factor, and 0.3309 is going to be the property factor. And you're going to see that, how it plays out for Lunenburg on the next slide. So this is how the state does it. So the next slide shows you how that comes into play for Lunenburg. So we start out with the equalized valuation from 2024. So that's row 1. You can see Lunenburg's number. Row 2 is that uniform percentage that we just saw from the previous slide, 0.3309%. That's used for every community in the Commonwealth. So for Lunenburg, row 3, the state calculates that your local effort from property wealth is $7,859,951. Then 4 through 6 is from the income from the residents. So you can see the 2023 income. They multiply that by the uniform percentage rate that I just showed you how they calculate on the previous slide, 1.5897. Again, that's used for every community. And they come up with Lunenburg's effort from income. So $9,593,667. They add the two of those, they add 3 plus 6 to come up with 7, which is what they call combined effort yield. So they say Lunenburg's combined effort yield for the schools from those two factors is $17,453,617. Rows 8 and 9, they say what is the foundation budgets for all the schools Lunenburg belongs to and Lunenburg's piece. So that number of $25,340,750 is Lunenburg's portion of Monty Tech's foundation budget and Lunenburg's portion of Lunenburg Public Schools, which would be 100% of that. So that's the $25 million. They multiply that by 82.5%, because even the wealthiest of wealthy communities at least get 17.5% Chapter 70. So they max the effort at that number. So when they multiply that out for row 9, they come up with a max of $20,906,119. They compare that to row 7, and they say, no, Lunenburg can't afford that type of effort. So we're going to put the lesser of the two in 10. So that's where they get the 17.4 there. I jump over to row 13, and we start off at FY26. What was Lunenburg's required local contribution in this current year in total? $14.6 million. They multiply that by the municipal revenue growth factor, which is calculated by DOR. I put the definition that they provide in the box to the left, so you can see calculated by DOR, each municipality's local revenues, annual increase in Prop 2.5 levy limit, et cetera. So for Lunenburg, they've calculated it to be 4.22%. So they multiply that by row 13. And they say Lunenburg's FY27 preliminary contribution will be $15,221,687. They compare that number to row 10, which is what they said Lunenburg can afford to pay. And they bring that down. They say, oh, that is short from what we've calculated. What is the shortfall? It's $2,231,930, or 8.81%. So in row 23, you can see it says we are going to add a 2% increment if the shortfall is greater than 7.5%. So that's how they come up with the 292,107. They took row 13, which is what you're paying this year, and they multiply that by 2%, and that's how they come with the 292,107. They add that number to row 15, to what they calculated it will be this year. And that's where they come up with row 26, Lunenburg's FY27 required local contribution, $15,513,794. The next slide shows you how that 15.5 million is allocated to the schools. I'm going to focus on rows 5 through 9 because that's the FY27. FY26 is above. So you can see, so in row 5, they carried that 15.513 number forward. You can see the foundation enrollment of Lunenburg Public Schools for Lunenburg is $15.99. For Monty Tech, your foundation enrollment is $104. And your foundation budget attributed to Lunenburg for Monty Tech is $2,251,170. That is the 104 times one of the very first numbers I showed you, Monty Tech's foundation budget per pupil, which is $21,648. They multiply that out, and that's how they get the $2,251,170. They do the same for Lunenburg Public. They take your foundation enrollment, multiply the foundation budget per pupil for Lunenburg, and get that $23 million. So Monty Tech represents 8.88% of the whole. So we're going to get 8.87% of the $15,513,079. So that's where they come up with Lunenburg's required contribution to Monty Tech, $1,378,183. You can see in the first column, they've done the same thing for Lunenburg Public. So that represents a change, an increase for Lunenburg to Monty Tech of $107,472 for those students, which we'll get to how that plays in as well. The next slide shows you the required contribution for all 18 of our towns. The state goes through the exact same process as I just walked you through for Lunenburg for every single community, their property value, their income effort, and come up with the same calculations for all our communities. So you can see how each community fares towards that total $696,206 increase in total required contributions. Finally, we get to Monty Tech's actual FY27 proposed budget, kind of based on those foundations that I just brought you through. So in the budget summary, you can see in the proposed FY27, we start with our net school spending, $31,796,495. You saw how that was calculated by the state. The next piece is our transportation costs. So this is the cost to run our 30 buses that bring our students to and from school every day, our contracts. This, we have an approximate 4% increase in those contracts. So that's the 2.6. Our above net school spending that we're proposing is $911,785. This represents just slightly less, 2.87% above our required net school spending. So what is built into that, those two especially numbers, net school spending and above net school spending, one of the major increases for that is the athletic field renovations that we have to undergo. We are doing a tax-exempt municipal lease to fund those. So we are fitting that into our net school spending requirement. It is going into our operating budget. So to offset that, we took a hard look at what our capital budget looks like for next year, and we cut it by to $150,000 or $300,000 to basically offset that change in our net school spending number to represent the funding for the renovations. And then we have a $50,000 in the vehicle account. So that gives us a total proposed budget for FY27, $35,516,660, which is a 2.53% budget. It's a total budget increase of $875,316, but I want to point out that $806,000 of that is driven by our required increase in our spending. $63,000 of it is attributed to our transportation costs. So approximately $12,000 of that budget is outside of those two items. The next category showed you our estimated Chapter 70 from the state. In row 1, that's in red, required minimum contribution. That's again from all 18 communities. The next component is our transportation and other operating. So that just takes the numbers from above, transportation and above net school spending. It combines the two, and then we subtract out from there what our estimated transportation aid from our state revenue is projected to come in at for next year. So that's $2,075,000. We also have what's called a regional transportation reimbursement fund. So when we receive additional transportation money above what we've estimated. So in other words, if you're looking at FY26, we've estimated $2 million for transportation aid to come in. We are estimating and guessing that we might get $100,000 more than that when all is said and done at FY26, the end of this fiscal year. And what the school committee then in turn does is votes to take that extra money. they put it into this revolving regional transportation fund, and then they vote to take it right out for the following fiscal year. So in this case, it would be FY '27, to reduce assessments to our towns for transportation money. So the school committee is estimating we might get an additional 100,000. So that's where that comes from. The school committee also is voting to put in 300,000 from our excess and deficiency to offset this category. And on the next slide, you'll see our excess and deficiency. Excess and deficiency for a regional school is similar to town's free cash. So it's our quote-unquote savings account, much like the cash. We get it certified by the Department of Revenue. You'll see on the next slide our certified number. So we're proposing using 300,000 there, which will leave a net operating assessment to our communities of $1,045,165. The next piece is our capital budget from above. That's the 150 plus the 50. So we have a capital budget of 200,000. We are also proposing putting 200,000 from our excess and deficiency account there to leave no net capital assessment to our communities, totaling down for total assessment to all our communities of $13,968,980, or a total increase of $790,441, or 6% to all 18. The next slide shows you our certified excess and deficiency was certified by Department of Revenue at $1,212,910. So we are proposing taking 500,000 out of that account, approximately 40%. We put a small amount into our capital stabilization fund each year. I tell you kind of each year, that's to do that mid to high range capital project. So we don't have to come back to our communities to have a spike in our capital assessment. We're currently undergoing some engineering of our main electrical gear in the building, which we think the building was built around. So it's very old. And so we are planning that we're going to have some updates to that. So that's one of the things we're trying to build this account towards. And our OPEB account, much like communities, we have that requirement to put some funds into our OPEB account. We fund this very minimally, just to kind of say we do it. But our OPEB account has $77,367 currently in it. And you'll see on the next slide, which is our spending by function code, you'll kind of see where the funding is going. So this will give you a snapshot of the proposed funding as proposed to how our spending has been over the past couple of years in our proposed budget. In here, we have some anticipated COLA expenses. We have the health insurance increases. We're projecting a 7% health insurance increase. That could be on the low side. It could be a very too conservative budget. This year, we had a 12% health insurance increase, but our plans run from December 1st to November 30th. So if our budget increase comes in higher than that, we're looking at really it affecting 27 from July 1st to November. So hoping that what we put in there can help sustain it. Also within here, you'll see a large increase under the function 3510 athletic services. That is where we've budgeted for the tax exempt municipal lease for the athletic complex. So that's why that has increased. We currently still have a TELP that we put in place a few years ago, as you'll recall, to redo all our rooftop units. That lease comes up in '29. So that will go away. That's built into our utilities account. You can see we've decreased our fixed assets. And as I talked about, we put a small amount into OPEB. We're proposing funding it at $10,000 and stabilization at $40,000 for '27 to bring us to that total budget, $35,516,660. The next slide is the foundation enrollment, school attending children snapshot. So just remind you again, foundation enrollment, students who are actually at Monty Tech, students who are residents who go to school choice to other vocational schools, and the practical nursing program in district. So we have the 1465, the out of district 11, for total enrollment 1476. Then you can see the school attending children numbers. These are given to me by your superintendent of schools of each school district. Those are the students in grades 1 through 12. There was no pre-K or K when the district agreement was established, so those represent the 1 through 12. Those numbers matter for two reasons. It's the basis for each town's capital apportionment of your assessment, as well as the town's apportionment of our freshman class quota. So that's why those numbers are important. And those numbers calculate into percentages, which are shown on the next slide. So you can see Lunenburg represents, for operating purposes, 7.1% of Monty Tech's budget, and Lunenburg represents 6.65% of the capital. So again, that would be, you represent 6.675 for your capital apportionment, as well as the freshman quota. You would get 6.65% of the freshman class. The next slide breaks down all that information from all of our towns. I'll focus, obviously, with you on Lunenburg. So you can see 104 foundation enrollment, foundation budget 2.25, just your enrollment times the foundation budget per pupil of 21,000 and change. The row 1, labeled with 1, required minimum contribution, 1,378,183, as determined by the state, as I showed you how they calculated. Lunenburg's portion of our transportation and above category is 74,196. There's no capital piece this year because we're fully offsetting capital with E&D. So we're proposing an assessment of Lunenburg of $1,452,379, which is an increase of $117,858, which I know, ouch. Which the next slide will show you, all but 10,000 of that is driven by the state's required minimum contribution. You can see the breakdown. The required minimum contribution is 95% of your total assessment. And I broke out on the end, Lunenburg's assessment per pupil, what I say comes out of the town's coffers, tax base, is $13,965 per pupil. And that is my presentation, and we're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else want to take the test on what you just went over?
And sorry I was super long. I apologize to everybody.
It's our first time through this time, so we
Yeah.
get it quicker as we go.
No, I don't know. I appreciate it, I really do. I'll go down. Any questions from the committee?
I do. So congratulations, you know how the state formula works. I don't know anyone else who does, which is amazing. The part that I'm trying to put it together, so you went through the state formula, how you build your budget, the overall increase on your total budget. And what I'm trying to bring it together is the cost per pupil for Lunenburg went up 5.6%. So how do I merge those two factors, the state process that you explained extremely well, your budget that just went up by 2.53%, and how does Lunenburg end up with a 5.69% increase?
Mostly, again, driven by the state formula.
Yep.
That factors in those pieces of the property values, the wealth, and the municipal revenue growth factor. So if I do the math on what your required minimum contribution percentage went up, that really tells you the story.
The required,
Yep, your last sheet, I think really the one that just has a nice, easy
Okay.
breakout.
Third column.
So if you look at the comparison for Lunenburg from 26 to 27,
right?
you'll see that in the third column, required minimum contribution, that went up $107,472. That is an increase, that's an 8.4% increase above your required minimum went up 8.4% above your required minimum from this year.
Okay.
That is really, I know it's a terrible answer, and I apologize that that's the one I have.
No,
But it's the one, it truly is.
That was the question.
Yeah.
And how come the transportation assessment went up so much? Is that also, was that more similar to other towns, or
So
was
it's.
that also driven by the state?
Yep, nope, that's Monty Tech. That piece, that transportation and operating assessment component, which went up by 26,000, which, yes, is a good increase. That's the piece of our transportation, as well as the above net school spending component. So our above net school spending, last year, we were at 1% above. This year, we're closer to 3%. We're at 2.8% above, and that's largely driven because of I point at him like it's his fault, it's his fault, by the athletic complex renovation. But you can see that we tried to offset that increase by your capital assessment going down by 16,000. So having that net really only be a $10,000 different for our towns, we really cut our capital, knowing that it was kind of a shift just to another category.
Okay. So, translating what you said about, how Lunenburg ends up with a 5.69% increase versus the 2.53, is that the state formula is making it so Lunenburg now is contributing a greater part to your budget, and other towns and cities are contributing less.
In some instances, they go up. You can look at
Yeah.
If you go back to the slide that has all the required contributions,
Right.
no community really pays the same amount per pupil because it's based upon that community's factors. Like Athol, for example, pays a lot less per pupil than a Lunenburg.
But now they're paying even less because we're taking in 5.6% of the increases.
They actually are paying more, going back to this required contribution sheet. If you're looking at it, Athol, just as the example, their foundation enrollment goes from 109 to 106, which is a decrease of 3 kids, but their required minimum increases by 10,924. So when I present to Athol, it's going to be an increase to them as well. Yes, it's just different numbers.
No,
because of their
I get
tax.
that, but
Yep.
I'm just
Yep.
trying to marry your budget overall increased by 2.53%.
Yeah,
And our budget, our cost has gone up by 5.6. So someone, percentage-wise, is going to be paying, is going to have a less increase than I
Yes.
am.
oh, yes, yes.
That was my driving point.
100%.
But you're saying that that is exclusively driven by the state?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Because with our factors,
Yeah.
for our piece of your assessment, which is that transportation and other, your percentage is truly how much enrollment you have at Monty Tech. So that's why I give you that percentage sheet. So for Lunenburg, you represent 7%. So it's just a 7% flat. The state is what takes into all the property value, income levels, municipal, yes.
Okay. That's all.
Any other questions?
Well, it just, one thing is pretty noticeable is that your Chapter 70 money only went up 0.6%, or 0.59.
Yes,
Right, and your budget is 2.5% increase, which seems, with all the things that are going on with inflation and all that, seems to be reasonable. So all the towns combined
yep,
are paying the difference between the 2.5% that
Yes.
you're going up and what the state paid.
right.
Has there been any, at the state level, is this a vocational schools thing, or is this where it's really a small number? Has it been, I don't remember from the prior years what it's been like as far as the growth in the Chapter 70 money.
And I will point out too, before Tom will probably answer your question, when you go to the Chapter 70 sheet, the state, which looks, you can go back and see, it's called FY27 Chapter 70 Summary. The state is requiring, we had to make a $2 million cut to get to the budget that we're presenting to you tonight from our initial budget requests. But the state, when you look at our required net school spending increase, when you look at that, the state is requiring we go up 2.6%. So we kind of try to work within the confines of what the state gives us. Like I said, out of the initial request, of course, it's often a wish list budget, but we did make $2 million in cuts to get to where we are today.
And what I would say about the vocational schools in terms of the Chapter 70 money, actually just this morning, we did a virtual meeting of all the vocational superintendents. And the question was asked, how's your Chapter 70 money? And pretty much across the board, they were all similar to us, where they got maybe 100,000 or something like that increase, except for the vocational schools that are located in those communities, those large cities that get huge benefits from the Student Opportunity Act. It's very clear when you look and you see the distinction between the huge chunk of folks that are held harmless And the folks that are getting that student opportunity money, because they have high, low-income populations and everything else, but it's night and day. And that even includes, being honest, that even includes the vocational schools. They're getting huge money too, so.
And that's because when they do the calculations, there's more non-English speaking primary language, lower income.
Correct.
Yes.
All those things.
Correct.
Which are part of the formulation.
We're even finding that the regional schools, especially in this district, are all held harmless as well. 271 districts out of 359 are held harmless. So Lunenburg is one of those held harmless districts as well for the school system. So we're only getting that $75 per pupil increase, which is low.
So unrelated, but related, there is a push in the state to change the, how you're taking in new students, and some vocational schools have changed it to a lottery. What's the status for some of those changes to you?
Yeah, so I mentioned it very quickly in my intro, but we, along with all the other schools, we have adopted the lottery as well.
Oh, you have?
So, yes, so
Okay.
basically the application process is any student who just fills out the regular application gets their name into our lottery one time. There were 4 different opportunities that the state allowed vocational schools to allow kids to get an additional weight, an additional time to put their name in. At Monty Tech, we only chose to do one, and that was based on attendance. We have always felt that attendance is so important at Monty Tech because with the A-week, B-week schedule between 1 week academics, 1 week vocational, if you miss a long stretch, you could miss an entire week of academic instruction. So we really focused on that. So any student who could have less than 27 absences for their entire 7th grade year and half their 8th grade year got their name into the lottery a second time.
How many?
27
27 for a year and
for
a
the
half.
entire 7th grade year and the first half of their 8th grade year.
Point out that that's unexcused.
Yes, sorry.
A
unexcused.
doctor's appointment,
Yes,
et cetera,
correct.
is an excused absence.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, was that new for, is that, when is that being deployed? Because I think I asked you that question last year.
I recall.
It
I
starts
mean, it's
this
okay.
year.
You
Yeah,
go to
no,
it.
yeah, well, it's brand new to this year in terms of the lottery.
Okay.
There were other, some districts chose, there was a discipline that you could do. But the only thing that kept a person from getting it literally was if a 7th or 8th grader committed a felony and either was found guilty or accepted or admitted guilt. And how are we going to find that out? Because they're all minors, so how are we going to find out who actually has a felony anyhow? So we decided that one, we didn't even bring that one on board or anything else like that.
All right.
So the only additional way you can get from us is that attendance one.
So that's going to be new for the FY '27.
So this current 8th grade students are going through that process.
Yep.
Their applications are due March 1st. We're going to do our lottery. It's going to be an electronic lottery. We'll do that on March, I think it's 26th.
That's great.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad that changed. Thank you.
No problem.
Do you know how many Lunenburg students were turned away from being able to enter the?
The wait list.
Well, but I can tell you, of that 104, 97 Lunenburg students are enrolled. 5 are school choice out, going to Leominster, and 2 are practical nursing students. So I don't know how many were turned away, but recognizing that there's some school choice out there would tell me.
I didn't think about bringing the wait list. It's I don't think it's a huge significant one, but
Okay.
it's probably in the teens, I'm guessing.
Okay. On the athletic complex, I think you said you're taking a loan out for that?
Yes, a tax exempt lease.
How long?
7 years is what I based it on.
Okay, so this year you're kind of offsetting the impact of it by decreasing other capital expenses. Do you see that over the next 7
Yes.
years?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, totally.
The district agreement, How long is that in place for? Is that an indefinite agreement, or is it something that gets renegotiated over time?
Very rarely, yes, basically it is just an ongoing thing. There have been some amendments here and there. I can recall one we did, and that was probably 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yep.
So, but very rarely is it changed.
Okay. So just, just by way of a comment, first of all, like, I'm a huge advocate for vocational schools, right? I think not enough students are using them, which was kind of my first question. So the opportunity to have them, I think, is very important. I think this inequity on how Lunenburg is charged for the overall, what is only a 2.5% increase to your budget, us bearing an 8.8% increase. You're still our school, when our Lunenburg public schools are, fighting for more in the 3% and that sort of thing, is a very hard thing to kind of overcome. So are there other, efforts or actions that can be taken such that Lunenburg's percentages is reduced? Their overall percent increase? Because, the state formula is really killing towns like Lunenburg, and the money is going to Fitchburg, the money is going to Leominster, and they have the advocate for it. I mean, our representatives advocate for those towns much more so than ours. So what can we do? What can we ask our representatives to do to kind of, if anything, to kind of control those costs?
I mean, unfortunately, it's probably the immediate and road answer, because we've talked about it before. But we're on the precipice of potentially changing the formula. They just won't take the final step. And I think both on the school side and on the financing, the city council, town council, whether it's select board, they want to talk about it. They keep talking about doing it, but they keep saying, well, it's going to take us 3 years to come up with that new form. It would not take them 3 years. They just need to accept the fact that the state needs to be picking up more of this and taking it back from the towns. And I think, last year they did have a nice forum at UMass that a lot of folks, even from our district, turned out for and everything else. Any opportunity for those, Tammy and I go. We'd love to see folks you there as well. I think there just has to be more pressure. And I agree with you.
Yes.
The legislature is not, they talk a lot, but they won't call for the action, and that's what needs to happen.
It has to be done, have to work. Our jaws dropped when we saw these numbers.
Yeah, literally the first thing Tammy looked to see was what's going up, what's falling.
How much is our towns going
First
up?
thing she looked at.
And, yeah, it was, so yes, we have to get out there and advocate. We'll advocate with you because we agree. We agree.
Okay. Town manager or any questions from our new finance director? I do usually open it even to the public if there's quick questions or comments. If not, okay.
Can I ask one thing about the out-of-district? So I know for regular schools, the sending district and receiving district, the fee is only $5,000 or something like that?
Yes.
And you mentioned that there are 4 or 5 students going to Leominster,
Yep.
and under the vocational branch, so that means they're doing the vocational thing which it's a different than the high school, although in the same building. Does Lunenburg still pay the whole amount to you?
Yes.
And how much do you pay Leominster?
It depends, I guess. So yes, so what happens when we have a school choice out student? So a student lives in Lunenburg, going to Leominster. It gets added to Monty Tech's foundation budget as a Lunenburg kid. So the school gets the Chapter 70, the additional assessment piece, we get the fee from Lunenburg for that student. From our Chapter 70 money, on the other side, the school takes, the base is 5,000. So that's the base. But if a student receives special education services over at Leominster, they put in whatever services that student's getting, and they call it an increment. So depending on the services the kid's getting, the Monty Tech could have, I've seen us pay 25,000 or better for people, for a school choice kid.
Right.
The base is 5, but we could pay whatever if the student. The inverse of that is when we do have a kid, say, start in Fitchburg, they become a 10th or 11th grader, move to Leominster, we allow them to stay as a school district. That's how we choose to let them stay. Now, Fitch, so they're moved to Leominster, they still come to Monty Tech. We only get the 5,000 for that student, and Fitchburg Public Schools will get the full assessment in Chapter 70. So the same thing happens with Lunenburg Public. If they have a school choice, if they're receiving a school choice kid in, so if a kid from Ayer goes to Lunenburg, Lunenburg only gets 5,000 for that kid. But if a Lunenburg student chooses to go to the Ayer Shirley Public School, it would happen exactly the same way as I just explained to you.
But what I'm tying is, like, if out of the 104, and we are calculating the per people, what is Lunenburg paying to you? I don't think I got that answer. What is Lunenburg paying to you for those 5 kids that are going to Leominster? Is it the 13,000?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And that becomes your problem. And the first, meaning, if they're $5,000 assessment, they're 5,000.
Great,
If they're
yep.
25, you will have to deal with it.
Yep.
All right, thank you both, and thank you for agreeing for coming in earlier.
Of course.
I
Yes.
actually prefer to have it before you take a vote on it,
Yep.
and if there's things we could talk,
Yes.
prior to a vote, that's much better in my opinion, so I do thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we'll take like a quick recess, so that stormwater, I think you have a quorum, right?
I don't think we do, actually.
No?
I got 2 sitting members.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you go. Okay, yes, we do have 2.
He's stealthy. All right, maybe you guys want to come up to the table after them. And Bill, I think you're presenting as well, so you can do it from there. I have your slides up if you want.
I was noticing Fitchburg had, I think, negative 123 students growth for the year, or year over year. And Winchington had 163. Why Winchington so much? And I'm comparing it to Fitchburg. Did they have a school issue? I can't remember.
Got to go to their meeting one day.
That's a lot.
All right, why don't you call your meeting to order?
Sure. I'll bring to order the joint session of the Stormwater Task Force for today, February the 5th.
Tim,
Yes.
you wanna turn
Oh,
on-
right.
There we go.
There we go. I'll bring to order the Stormwater Task Force meeting for today, February the 5th, 2026.
All right, thank you. And I think, Bill, you got the nomination to present?
Yes,
All right,
Turn on your
short
mic-
straw.
Turn on the microphone. There we go.
Thank you.
she's tough. All right, let me throw them up on the screen. There is a slight delay in it going on that screen. But if I'm like radically behind,
Yeah, I have it in front of me too.
okay, but if like I'm behind, just let me know.
Okay.
And with that, the floor is yours.
All right, so we'll start off with what is a stormwater utility, right? Get to the basics. So a stormwater utility treats stormwater management as a public service, much like electricity or gas or water. And a utility operates as a dedicated enterprise fund and is supported by property assessments based on the contribution of stormwater from each of those properties that goes into our municipal systems. And the stormwater utility is a stable source of revenue that can be used to create the enterprise fund to complete more comprehensive stormwater-related programs and improvements beyond the MS4 program requirements. So next few slides will explain some of that. And really down to basics, what is stormwater? It's water that runs off of all properties after rain or snow storms melt off and picks up litter and bacteria and chemicals and sands and other debris. It flows over land and into the drainage systems and ultimately into water bodies. So the stormwater is carrying pollutants to our streams and wetlands. And I highlighted we have 3 major recreational lakes in town, Hickory Hills, Lake Shirley, and Lake Whalen. So cleaner stormwater runoff means cleaner water for drinking, swimming, fishing, boating, and for protecting wildlife. So why do we need to manage stormwater? Stormwater runoff, again from rainfall and snowmelt, represents the single largest source of pollutants in our waters. So the town has a stormwater management bylaw, and we fall under the NIPD's Phase 2 permit, or the MS4 permit, which is a federal and state permit. And I'll explain what that is a little bit. So the MS4 permit is by the EPA, so federal, and it's administered by the state, DEP. And it authorizes the town to discharge our stormwater into water bodies. So MS4 stands for Municipal Separated Storm Sewer System. So it's our system of catch basins and pipes and ditches, and it's what collects all the stormwater and ultimately discharges into waters here in town. So the MS4 has 6 minimum control measures. The first is public education and outreach, which we do every year. We post on social media. It's usually in the town meeting booklet. It's usually the last page. We have some kind of educational flyer in there. And the second control measure is public involvement and participation. So we have the Stormwater Task Force, which the public is always invited to attend. They can always comment. The third measure is illicit discharge detection and elimination. So that's looking for illicit discharges into our system. The fourth is construction site stormwater runoff controls. We do have rules in place for that. That's the bylaw, basically. Let's see. The planning board administers most of that. The fifth is post-construction stormwater management, which again, we have the bylaws in place for that. When somebody builds a new home, disturbs over an acre, they have to put in stormwater BMPs. They need a better name for that. It's best management practices. The sixth is pollution prevention and good housekeeping for municipal operations. So that's where the DPW comes in, right? So we operate and maintain our systems. We have to train our staff. We're supposed to be cleaning catch basins and sweeping roadways. We're supposed to be doing inspections, and we're supposed to be reducing salt usage in the winter. So that's where most of our funding goes, is into that control measure. There's additional core requirements. The town had to come up with a stormwater management plan, which is done. We have to do annual reporting to the DEP. We use a consultant to help us with that. We had to file a notice of intent at the beginning of the permit a few years back. And there's can be other requirements for impaired waters. So why meeting the requirements of the MS4 permit matter? So compliance protects local waterways, drinking water, and recreation areas. Failing to comply can result in enforcement actions or costly corrective work. The MS4 requirements are long-term and require annual budgeting and staff capacity. And deferred maintenance costs more in the future, 2 to 5 times more, and sometimes even more than that. So right now, how are we paying for this? So presently, we're using the DPW operational budget. So I have a line item in the budget for stormwater. This year, it's $110,000. And it covers the public outreach, the illicit discharge detection, training, the BMP inspections, engineering for some small projects. And I put in there a small project. We did a project at the library. We added a BMP, so that cost of that came out of that budget. But if we go with the utility, we're going to get everything in the TPW budget plus more, right? We can have a better program for illicit discharge. Right now, it's just if somebody calls us and says something looks funny, we go and check it. We could have a program where we're going out and checking if we had staff. We can do engineering for other projects, big and small projects. We could, in the future, cover capital projects. We would get our catch basin cleaning done. We would get our roadway sweeping done. I have a slide coming up on future requirements of the permit. We would be able to pay for those. We'd be able to add new stormwater BMPs to other town properties. And we could develop a pesticide, herbicide, and fertilizer program to further help protect our waters. So I put a slide here for the criminal penalties if we're not meeting the requirements of the MS4 permit. And they're kind of onerous, right? It could be up to $25 per day or 15 years in jail, depending on the violation. So obviously the federal government and the state are serious about this permit. And again, we're paying for it out of the DPW operational budget, but we're not meeting the requirements of the MS4 permit at this time. If we do want to just keep putting money into the operational budget to come close to meeting the requirements, I estimated a cost of $340,000 per year would have to be added to the DPW budget every year. And capital projects would still have to come out of the capital planning process. And Chapter 90 funds would still have to be used for drainage projects. And just a note on Chapter 90 funds, they cannot be used for any maintenance. So the sweeping and catch basin cleaning can't come out of Chapter 90 funds. So why aren't we meeting requirements? Just to further emphasize, we're not roadway sweeping, we're not cleaning catch basins. We are meeting our reporting requirements, but there are other day-to-day stormwater operations and necessary upgrades and emergencies that were not there. So in 2024, there was a draft version of the new MS4 permit that came out, and it looks like they're gonna have more illicit discharge and monitoring requirements, and added new impaired water monitoring obligations. So again, that will cost more money. All right, so now into the budget. So I put the budget together just to get us to compliance. And I based the budget, it's very similar to the sewer enterprise budget. So we'll see how it's put together in the next few slides, but overall, I'm saying we need $496,793 to get us to compliance. So the first part of it is new personnel and existing personnel. We would need to hire a stormwater project manager. Somebody's got to run the program, right? So I looked at other towns, came up with an average cost of similar positions in other towns. The utility would have to carry the cost of the fringe benefits for that person. And I looked at one of our employees, and that was 31% of their salary. It depends if they take health insurance or not. So this was somebody with health insurance, so probably best to keep it on the high side. And then they would have to carry part of the DPW director's salary. Similar to the sewer enterprise, it's 15%, because they do spend time overseeing the sewer enterprise, so it'd be the same overseeing this. So calculated those costs up to $139,000.
The fringe benefits at 26, I thought health insurance alone was estimated at 31,000.
For
But
the
this-
most expensive family plan.
Right. But this is only 15% of this total.
But you said a new stormwater project manager, would they be fully funded under this account?
Yes, correct.
So fringe benefits, to me, would have to be budgeted at least $31,000.
I'm trying to think how it worked with the sewer.
And I think health insurance would have to be 15% of at least whatever you have for insurance.
Right, right. So, yeah, I think the DPW director number's right. You might be right about the new project manager. We might have to increase that budget. I'd have to double check that.
Okay. I think in general, maybe not necessarily an action for you, but, maybe, to Karen and Jen is, let's have maybe a standardized formula for calculating fringe benefits, including health insurance, that everyone is using when they're looking to add personnel. I mean, thank you for thinking of it, obviously, but let's make sure it's right. Thank you.
Yeah, so on the next slide, so what is this project manager going to be doing? He's going to be producing the billing, documenting work, inspecting work of contractors in-house personnel, help to develop contract specs for stormwater-related projects, and so I know one thing that comes up is maybe will we have an abatement program if you have a stormwater BMP on your property? Well, without somebody to go out and inspect to make sure they're actually doing the operation and maintenance of it correctly, we can't do abatement. So this person would be responsible for that inspection. So right now, there's no staff available to do that. And once we get up and running, we'd have to hire that person pretty quick. I said the second quarter, because we'd need some money to pay them, so couldn't do it in the first quarter.
Am I on the same slide as you? I may have.
I'm 2 up now.
Okay.
Yeah. Just explanation of where those costs come from. So the fringe benefits is, retirement, health insurance, life insurance, and like you said, it could be more. And the explanation of the DPW director, right? Again, I'd be overseeing that utility, spending about 15% of my time there. So I have to pay 15% of my salary and my fringe benefits.
Yeah, and just the other thing on fringe benefits is I want to make sure it also covers the forever cost of OPEB and other things, so.
So typically in the sewer utility budget, we have a line for OPEB.
No, I'm understanding. I'm just saying, like, the cost of hiring an employee is not the annual. There is a lot more costs associated with hiring an employee. And I am a big believer that we should be outsourcing as much as possible versus hiring. So just because of all these, these costs that come along with a hire, so.
Right.
I just
so-
want to make sure we're having accurate.
Yeah, so I'm only proposing hiring one person just to administer and run this program.
Is this the slide we're on, indirect costs?
Indirect costs, yeah.
Okay.
So indirect costs is, right, all the billing, all the checks come into the accounting office, right? So the utility would have to pay for the time of the finance director, the town accountant and their staff, and the treasurer and their staff. So again, I based the formulas here off of how we budget for the sewer enterprise utility. And then the next slide is expenses. And again, just same as the sewer enterprise utility, pays all these different costs. I got explanations on the next slide. So office space, our program manager would need some office space at the DPW. So sewer utility has 2 employees, they pay $6,000 per year for office space. So I said 1 employee, $3,000 per year. Office expenses, paper, pens, ink, printer ink, envelopes. That has to be purchased by the utility. The sewer utility averages about $900 per year. So I think I was up a little bit. I said $1,500, since it'd be new, they would have to buy some new stuff.
Are you still on office space? I'm sorry.
Yeah, one more.
Okay, can I just stop you one second?
Of course.
You're kind of like opening a can of worms here, actually.
Yeah, okay.
Is $6,000 per year, is $3,000 per year for an office actually what it costs us to run an office in town?
I don't think that we have a calculation of that, but this is based on what I understand is the same formula that's used for the sewer enterprise.
Yeah, I guess my question just goes to one of like, are we keeping up with inflation and heating costs and everything else for these offices, for utilities that are supposed to be self-funded enterprise funds?
I think that's really becomes a difficult calculation depending on the particular building, and it's not a calculation we currently have.
I think it's one we should do.
I don't know if you have capacity to do that for your next iteration, but I certainly do not.
Yeah. Probably not, but yeah, it's something we could calculate.
I think we're learning that self-funded funds are rarely self-funded and they're highly subsidized in town. And I think we need to get to a state that if we're going to say something is self-sustaining, it needs to be self-sustaining and self-funded in its entirety, to include, office space, heating, trucks, administration, billing, everything that goes along with it. So it's kind of a side, I guess, to your specific presentation, but one that has been on the minds of at least, I think, a few people in town.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I'm on the next one, the cost of stamps. Stamps are 78 cents, but we catch a break, we only pay 74 cents per stamp. So I just calculated how many envelopes we'll be sending out to come up with that number. And then I threw in a cost for consultation with legal counsel, just based on the average what the sewer utility has paid over the last couple of years.
Is legal counsel under our current retainer and some percentage of that, or is this in addition to our current retainer?
It's in the current retainer, so this money would actually be paid back to the town.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I had an estimated budget, $1,000 for other expenses, newspaper advertisement, field supplies, stuff that comes up. So the next slide is about vendors. So right now, we're using a consultant to help with our MS4 permit. We'd still have to pay for that. And to get to our minimum requirements on catch basin cleaning and roadway sweeping, I estimated these costs here. So our vendors turns out to be a big part of the utility, $336,000. And the next slide shows a map of the urbanized areas in town, and these are the areas where we have to do the street sweeping twice per year. We do have an in-house sweeper. We're not even sweeping a tenth of the roads once a year. We just don't have the manpower. So it's nowhere near coming to the requirements of the permit.
Is that a requirement that's in the books today that we're not meeting, or one that's?
That is correct, yes.
All right, so we're not currently meeting a requirement for street sweeping?
Correct, and catch basin cleaning.
Okay.
Again, we have a catch basin cleaner in-house, but we're not coming anywhere near where we should be. Just lack of staff.
Okay.
So the next slide kind of explains how I came up with the numbers. So for the engineering, we've averaged about 21,000 for the MS4 permit for engineering. I show how I calculated the costs for catch basin cleaning. There's about 1,000 catch basins in the urbanized area.
1,000?
1,000, yeah.
That seems like a lot.
Yeah.
How many miles of roads we have?
We have about 90-ish. Yeah.
So,
There's like 8 from my house to the 4-way stop sign.
really?
Yes.
Threw a rock and hit 5
Yeah.
in my front yard.
Really? I guess Main Street is just deprived of them then.
So the last 3 years now, we've gotten grants to do an asset management. So we're finding all our catch basins, putting them on a GIS map. They're collecting data, the rim elevations and the bottom elevation, and where the pipes are all connecting. So we're getting there. We're to have a pretty good understanding of what we have. I think total now we're up to 1,350 in town.
Do you want to take questions now or at the end of your presentation?
What was that?
Do you want to take questions now or at the
Oh,
end of your
yeah.
presentation?
Anytime.
What are the machines that you need for cleaning the catch basin, if you were doing?
If we were doing it, so we have a clamshell type machine, which it can work, but we need somebody on it pretty much 3 months out of the year.
3 months out of the year?
at least.
Okay,
So Anna, can I ask one thing? Can we do clarifying questions now and then other questions afterwards? Would that be
Sure.
okay?
Okay, so we'll come back to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then for the sweeping in that urbanized area, based on that map on the previous slides, there's 72 miles that need to be swept twice a year. So calculate that out, and it comes out to $230,000. So the next slide, so the Stormwater Task Force has been working on a rate schedule. So we haven't nailed it down yet, but residential, single-family homes will pay less than $100 per year. And then every other property is based on a tiered structure, based on how much impervious area the property has. And the rate schedule will raise enough funds for this proposed budget. And on the next slide, I got some comparisons of the stormwater utility and the DPW operational budget. So in the utility, the funding comes from fees. In the operational budget, funding comes from taxes. In the utility, funds are dedicated to MS4 permit compliance. In the operational budget, funds can be allocated anywhere because they come from taxes. And if they were put into stormwater, they could be taken away, much like the pavement management line item was cut this year. So, and the utility charges are based on contribution of stormwater runoff to the municipality, based on impervious area, right? But if, out of the budget, that's not the case. It's an unbalanced contribution. Stormwater utility, in the future, we could have abatements for properties with BMPs. That can't happen with the operational budget. In the utility, funds can be used for grants, and they can be used for projects. And it's, funds in the utility are long-term sustainable sources of funding. But the operational budget, or the last thing over there is tax-exempt properties do not contribute money, but they do contribute dirty water to the system. And the next slide's another comparison. The stormwater utility, well, how am I going to say this? Stormwater utility in the operational budget can be used for MS4 reporting requirements, for roadway sweeping, for catch basin cleaning. But again, in the operational budget, all those requirements can only be met if it's funded, right? With the utility, when it's going to be funded, then we can do all those requirements plus more. We can do more illicit discharge detection, we can do stream restoration, new stormwater BMPs on town properties. We can come up with that pesticide program, and we could do more public education. All right, the next slide. Why is a utility fee not a tax? So a tax is defined as a financial charge or a levy imposed by a state. The purpose of the tax is to raise revenue, and it doesn't need to be appropriated to any single source, right? So it doesn't have to be appropriated to stormwater. Taxes could be raised to pay for MS4 compliance, but then appropriated elsewhere in the town budget. So a fee is a price one pays as a payment for services, such as a fee paid for by users of a municipal utility, right? So like sewer, you use the sewer, you pay a fee for that based on your usage. And fees are dedicated to MS4 compliance. And then the next one is some other towns that are nearby that have stormwater utilities, including Groton, Pepperell, Air, Rutland, Westford, Concord, Chelmsford, and Hudson. And there's about 30 more that we know of. And then I threw in this infographic. This is the stormwater BMP that we put at the library. It truly functions. It catches the water coming off the paved driveways and filters out all the pollutants before it discharges out. I recommend you go see it in the spring once all the snow's gone. It came out pretty good. And I want to thank the library and their helpers for helping us, get it in there, and with the different plants that we put in. Put a lot of thought and effort into that. So the next slide, the core messages. We need a stormwater utility because our rivers and streams are polluted from chemicals found in stormwater. Our lives depend on having clean and healthy water. Stormwater utilities are a fair way to pay to reduce stormwater pollutants. Ignoring stormwater pollution leads to health problems, property damage, flooding. Ignoring the problem now leads to increased future costs. Utility funds can be used to overcome the pollutants runoff from paved surfaces. And the average homeowner pays less than $100 a year, which is way less than their cable bill and smartphone bills. And we all cause pollution. We all need to work together and pay together to clean it up. And our next step is to continue to outreach to boards and committees, do some public outreach. We need to finalize our rate structure. And we're working on a warrant article now for the spring 26 annual town meeting. That would be just to establish the utility. We're not going to come forth with a budget yet. That would be at a future town meeting. And thank you, and I'll take the questions now.
All right. Questions? Anna, you had a question. So-
Go ahead.
So I noticed you have street sweeping and catch basin cleaning in both DPW and stormwater. Where would that split be between who's responsible for what?
Well, if we establish the utility would be doing 100% of it.
So that would all be subbed out then? Whoever's doing it now within the town would no longer be doing that task?
Correct. But again, we're not doing much at all.
In your budget, I didn't see any vehicle costs. You just figure that DPW would pick up whatever vehicles would be required for stormwater transportation?
Yeah, so that program manager, if he had to go out in the field, it would probably end up paying a mileage for his own truck or vehicle, and that would come out of that other expense line item.
Personal vehicle, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Like a street sweeper, which would be solely used by the Stormwater Task Force, but it said it's coming out of capital funds. That means the town's funds are gonna pay for it, and are they going to be, the stormwater utility gonna be paying for the use of that, or is that gonna be?
No, so street sweeping would be done by contractors.
That the stormwater
Would
utility
be,
pay for?
the utility would be paying for, yes.
And just one last thing about, I'm sorry. Just one last thing about your warrant article. I mean, me personally, as a town member, if somebody came up and said they were going to create a utility that I knew I had to pay for, and then you did not present a budget, I would say no to that instantly. I would, I would want to see how much you're going to be spending before I would say. So just heads up on that. Just my thoughts. I mean, but
Yeah, thank you for that.
You all set?
I'm good now.
Okay. So is the engineer for MS4 that you're suggesting, is that someone who it needs to be hired because we're establishing a utility? Or if we don't have a utility, in the slide here, you have it that, give me or, set up the utility, or give me 340,000, I think. If we have that 340, we don't need to hire I think, new stormwater project manager?
All right, so it sounded like a couple questions. So we've been using an engineer firm, this is year 8 of the permit, so we've been using them for 8 years, right, to help us with the reporting requirements and other work. So we'd have to continue hiring them.
On your budget, you still
With
keep
the-
that engineering for 25. My question is about the new stormwater project manager for $85,000 plus the fringe benefit. At the core of my question is, we need to hire that person because we are creating a utility. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that is out of, 496, 140, right about 496. That's almost 30% of the cost that the taxpayers are gonna, one way or the other, the taxpayers are going to have to fund this. And we're increasing the cost of that, what the taxpayer is going to have to fund by 30% because we want to segregate this as a utility. And I think that's a lot of money, right? It's not, I mean,
Right.
do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, yeah. The overhead cost is high because the overall cost of the utility is small, right? If we had,
Right, and
bigger
that's the very
system,
next thing I
yeah,
would say.
yeah,
Right? Because we're segregating this operation under the umbrella of a new utility, now it's going to cost Lunenburg residents initially 30% more to do that. It seems counterproductive. I would prefer to find a way to fund you and save $140,000 for the taxpayer. That's,
Can you go back to the slide that has your task description?
yep.
on the same thinking of it, like hiring a stormwater project manager, will probably be someone with a civil engineering background.
Most likely, yes.
Yeah. I mean, and you're not proposing any support staff for that person. So now we're paying a civil engineer to do billing, when in reality, we usually pay, you can see what we pay the sewer people to work there, and it's less than what would pay an engineer. So these two things, I find it kind of it gives me pause,
Right.
right?
So
Can
when,
I respond to this just short, briefly?
Sure.
So he does have a slide that says, why hire new personnel? So I'm just going to go over that again. The stormwater project manager is required to produce billing, okay? To your point, maybe you can do that with a less expensive administrative person. Document the work performed by the utility. I think that comes out of your current operating budget today, right?
Can you,
we're not-
I couldn't hear you. That comes out of where?
I think that comes out, I think he does that now. He has to document and report.
Okay.
Report every year. Don't you have to report every year?
right,
So
so
he's gonna take
reporting
over-
is, we
so he's
use
gonna take
our
over that.
consultant for that. No, when I say document the work, is
Yeah.
putting it into our GIS system. That's not getting done now.
Okay, so that's work that's not getting done, that needs to get done.
Right,
Inspect the work of contractors and in-house personnel. Is that getting done today?
somewhat,
Somewhat. But not enough.
not enough.
And help the development contract specifications for stormwater-related projects. Okay, so that strikes me as a civil engineering kind of sort of task that requires a level of expertise. Stormwater project managers inspect stormwater BMPs on private properties, so someone has to go out that understands BMPs and how to structure them and how consult with property owners on how to install them. That seems like a civil engineering task to me. Ensure compliance and operating and maintenance. So we had Greg Roy come to one of our meetings, and when he heard we're establishing the utility, he basically said, "What about all the commercial properties?" And he's got he has a business and he doesn't want to get taxed with a big stormwater bill. I don't blame him. So he's basically representing sort of all the commercial properties in town. So we listened to him, and basically there's going to be an abatement process. And he was basically describing some of the new properties and some of the work that they've done to make sure they mitigate during the construction process their stormwater. So there's going to be some properties in town that deserve abatements. So this guy's going to have to look at the properties, figure out who deserves an abatement and what it should be. And they're going to have operating and maintenance manuals, and we're going to have to review them. And he's going to have to review them regularly to make sure that they're following through with their operating and maintenance procedures. Someone's got to do that. So there's a lot of work that this guy's going to have to do. He reduced our dependency on consultants. So CEI was our consultant last year, right?
Right.
And how much did we pay them?
Just for the reporting requirements, 21,000.
So this new civil engineer is going to take over that role, I would think.
Wait, the 21,000 is going to go away, you're saying?
I don't think it'll fully go away,
Right,
but it
that's-
should be reduced.
It should be.
And
I
once
would think
this
it would be-
person's up and established, yeah.
I was speaking from the two proposals that I see here. He said 340, or it might be 360, I don't know, or a utility. And the difference there is the personnel. So it's like, can we just give you 300 plus thousand?
There's a lot of work that's not being done that needs
And-
to be done.
Right.
And when he does the stormwater, when he
So I hear you.
surveys all of them, someone has
this-
to establish a schedule on when we're going to clean them. I don't think they're doing that.
I hear you. I mean, there are a lot of things that, should be done in the town. Unfortunately, I could go for a list, let's, like, if we were to start with facilities, oh man, but we are creating a new revenue for the town that is literally taking $500,000 from the taxpayers. So,
Yes, yes.
so it's perpetual, and once you create that infrastructure, it's going to be there forever. So I'm questioning those things, and trying to figure out, is this, and this was my comment that I had at town meeting, and this is my comment that I came to your meeting and I said the same thing. Is there other ways that we can accomplish this work, and have those other ways been considered? So, I would like to know what would be the cost of do we have a street sweeping machine?
We do.
We do? So, 3 months to do the catch basin, maybe another 3 months to do, let's think of hiring someone to operate those machines that we already have. I don't know, you were presenting me one budget with this information. I would like to see, personally, that's how I operate, other way financially on how to accomplish these things. And it may not be as difficult, and it could be, maybe we are hiring one extra person to do this during the summer months, and maybe that person is snow plowing. Bill, are you currently hiring people to do snow plowing, or is it just all done in-house?
Nope, we could use more in-house people.
There we go. So at the end, my request was going to be to see, allowing in-house, we're operating in-house without another utility. In terms of projects, another way to accomplish some of these small projects, and maybe even some larger ones, is if we do a budget for many small projects and do a one-time borrowing. And I just think, for me, on the financial side of things, that's how I would approach that in a high level, is what does the operations of this utility looks like, and what is this operation in a different way would look like, and let's look at the numbers. So that's, and that was going to be where I was going to go by asking, the cost of a street sweeper, the cost of a operating machine person, and let's explore that way. And perhaps we're hiring an engineer at some point that you will need can assist you with this, but it's also assisting you with different things, right? Because you hire a lot of engineers, you have a budget for that. So I don't, we've been presented with one solution, and I think there might be other solutions that can be financially structured in a different way, and they might be more advantageous for us. That's my feedback with this, that's all. I yield the floor.
Can I ask one question? If the town was in a situation and we had $400,000 with nothing to do, would it be better to give it to the DPW and have you do all this?
Well, if you gave me that money,
Yeah.
I'd put it out to contract.
Right.
Have contractors do the work.
Right. So the issue really is, we don't have the $400,000 to give you extra money. So this is a way to get around 2.5. And the one benefit I can see is, well, the bigger commercial properties might pay a little more. We don't have a tax rate for commercial and residential, so maybe we can get them a little bit more for this thing. But ultimately, that's the only reason for this, is that this is an easy way for us to get money. It's an important thing. I think I saw everything you wrote, and I agree, this is stuff that towns will forget about or don't want to do, or first thing to cut, because, I'm drinking water, it's fine. But this is the stuff that the state says we got to do. So we are going to do it. So the state says, oh yeah, get around 2.5 by doing this. My problem is that, as Anna has said, you're creating another organization that has needs and wants, and it's 100 now a year, maybe it's 200, 300. Oh, it's a difficult thing to ask of a town. I, myself, think that it would run better is if we sucked up and put on our big person pants and said, we need to do this, and that may be part of our new budgets for here on in, and we're going to have to do that, like we did for the roads in the past and others. But I think to take a perfectly good DPW department and say, well, we're going to kind of finagle this, because it's going to create more work. Oh, how much do you bill for the utility versus DPW? All that paperwork adds costs. And as we know, we're having a hard time dealing with the paperwork that we have now. And what happens if the administrator who runs that is not working, and now we don't, so all of a sudden you're doing it all, and now 40% of your time is doing that. So it has all the problems that a small town has, adding to that additional paperwork. The only benefit I see is it's just an easier way to get more money. That honestly, that's how I feel. That's just, and not saying that's, the state probably created it for that, because it's an easier way to get more money, but I don't think we have to do that. I think we're talking about big numbers now. That might be a number we want to put in.
Yeah, if I may just follow on to that, when I think of a utility, I think of electric and water and sewer, and, if I don't pay my electric bill, they shut it off. So if I don't pay my stormwater bill, what do? Stop pumping water down my driveway? Because I'll take that, okay? Which gets me to my other question. I hate things of the average homeowner will, right? Because first of all, you should do it in cups of coffee, as we all know, right? But, my own personal situation, right? I have a long driveway, I have a lot of impervious surface, but all I really had for the longest time was the stormwater runoff of the Flat Hill Village coming down, broken, onto my property, and I had to pay for it. But am I going to be one that's charged $1,000 because I have a long driveway? But the average person is $100. So I really want to understand what the equation would be for, the formula for a payer. Why should I pay anything when I've already paid thousands of dollars due to the negligence of this town's ability to manage stormwater already? So I have a lot of problems with setting up a utility.
Right. So in your case, you're a single-family home, you'd pay less than $100 per year.
So it's a flat rate per home, no matter how much is out?
In Bill's defense, I've been the biggest advocate for everybody in town with who owns a residence paying a flat rate, no abatements. Because the stormwater utility extends on every single 90 miles of road in the whole town. Everybody uses all the roads in the town. Makes no sense why anybody wouldn't want to contribute to maintain the town infrastructure for stormwater. So don't be property focused. Look at the town.
Okay, but we just, at last town meeting, had this however many tens or hundreds of $1,000s bill to survey impervious surface across all the town. Why did we need to do that then?
That was for commercial properties.
Right, that's the properties other than the single-family residence.
Yeah. Those are the commercial properties that are not the equivalent residential unit, which is less than $100. So those are
Commercial
all going to get assessed
properties,
independently.
sorry, commercial properties will operate on a sliding scale based upon their square footage of impervious area. For residents, it's a flat fee. For businesses, we needed that survey so that we understand how much space everybody's taking up and how much impervious area everybody's creating, specifically for businesses and commercial users.
So what's your equation on the percentage that the homeowners will pay versus the commercial or others?
Well, that's the rate structure that we haven't finalized yet.
But you somehow came up with under 100 for homeowners.
Right, so we have, I don't know, 4 or 5 iterations of that rate structure. We're trying to keep it as small as possible to match this budget, right? So we're not quite there yet.
Keeping it to less than $100 per homeowner is pretty much in line with what all the other communities are doing. So we're trying to stay in line with what seems to work in other communities.
Okay. I do think billing is a cost that will be very inefficient for a utility like this, collecting billing on it. What are you going to do when people don't pay their bills? So I think the better way to do this is to roll it into our current operating budgets than to set up some entity that's going to have huge inefficiencies. If we're looking at civil engineers, you're not going to find a civil engineer for $80,000 a year. People are graduating college at more than $80,000 a year with civil engineer degrees. So I think you got to look long and hard about the actual cost associated with someone qualified to run a service like this. So
Yeah, so I looked at the other towns, and that they were engineers, and that you saw the numbers there, that's about the average.
all right.
Yeah, towns don't pay engineers that much.
Yeah. So I guess, I think I share the sentiment of the others that we need to deal with stormwater. I think, I'm not a fan of this model. So I would ask that you look at other potential models and don't get, focused on just one. As Anna had put some of the pros and cons and puts and takes, what else might we think about? But I do appreciate, quantifying everything that needs to get done, because it does need to get done, right? We do know that the 1,000 drains need to be cleaned, and that the street sweeping needs to be done, and all these kinds of other things. So I think it's been valuable work. I think I'm skeptical on utility as the right model by which to implement it. So, but are there any other questions, comments? Anything? Oh, yeah, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For the public, I just want to make one quick correction, and then I'm going to ask a question through you to somebody in the audience, if that's all right. So I've heard referenced quite a few times, not just in this meeting, but in others, that this is a state requirement. I want to be clear that MS4 is not a state requirement. This is a federal requirement, so I just want to be crystal clear on that. This is a federal mandate. The question that I wanted to ask, without actually knowing the answer through you, so not something that I typically like to do, but we do have the consultant from Weston and Sampson, Jory Schwartz, that's been working with us in the room tonight, and where she has worked with a number of other communities on setting up utilities. I just wanted to ask if, where there's questions about other models, how is she aware of any other communities that have brought additional revenue to fund stormwater related projects into their community without doing a utility in some manner?
Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. I was going to say, I think for most communities, stormwater is really the kind of the forgotten utility compared to other utilities. And I think the MS4 permit really has been kind of the driver to set the stage for like the need for a utility for many communities to have that dedicated funding source. But I think we've only touched on kind of the cusp of what kind of the stormwater needs that a utility would actually fund. There's so much more. And for most communities that even have a utility, it's not even fully funding those stormwater needs. So I think that's just something to think about, perspective-wise. And there really aren't a lot of other, funding sources. There's not a lot of grant opportunities out there. We talked about leveraging, using some of this money maybe as match for grants. Obviously, that that's a possibility. But if it's not being funded through utility, then obviously it's coming back through the community's budget, so traditional budget. So there's not a lot of things. And I guess if I may, just a few other kind of clarifications based on some of the stuff that we discussed tonight. I think I would say a lot of communities that do set up a utility do hire some type of dedicated, stormwater manager, stormwater engineer. And I do think, I don't want to, that person does take on a lot of other functions, that I think, we talked a little bit about. I think they could take on some of the work that maybe the consultant's doing, like we talked about with the reporting. I also think, we're staring down a new permit. I know we talked about, Bill mentioned that there's a draft permit out, and we're expecting another, a new permit to be finalized this year. And, those requirements are even more extensive. So I think, for communities that have this in place, they're preparing themselves for kind of what's ahead. So I do think, like Bill mentioned, the town's kind of struggling now to meet the requirements. And I just worry when I think it's in the, the operational budget, I think, or I guess when you're taking out of the general fund, I think a lot of times, that money can be utilized for other sources. And I've seen that happen with other communities, and we've gone to town meeting and we've looked at, okay, we have this stormwater utility we're trying to pass, and going back to, okay, nope, we're going to create this line item in the general fund and it's going to cover all of the costs. We don't have to go the utility route. And, for that first year when we went forward, it was like, okay, yeah, no, we're going to budget it in the general fund. The next year, they're like, oh, we're really strapped. That was the first thing that was cut. And so that funding was gone. So I think, having it in the utility, I think it does provide that security that funding is going to be available for those
Do you have
kind of
the
for
name
those
of
needs
those
going.
towns or cities?
That we've been working with? Yeah.
No, the ones that you said went through the route of the operational budget, and then, they cut the very next year.
Yeah, the town of Millbury. So I've been working with them.
Do you remember what year was that?
So we went to town meeting in 2024. I did a presentation with the finance director. And so we presented and said, hey, here are the two budgetary options. And they really preferred keeping it within, the general fund and funding it. But then, the next year in 2025, when we were going back, the budget was really tight. And that was one of the first things we're like, oh, we really don't have the funds available, and we have all these other pressing needs, which is totally understandable with any community, and schools and other things come into play, and it's, so I think that's hard. I don't think any of the communities that have set up a utility would say that they've regretted, going down that pathway. Absolutely. And, there's different ways the utility can be set up too. It could be a lot of, you talked about like preferring to like outsource some of that work. And there's definitely utilities that are set up more as just a standard enterprise fund, right? So a lot of that work is, they're hiring a lot of outside contractors or consultants to support that work. I worked with Tewksbury, that's kind of how they're set up. Then there's like Chelmsford, we worked with Chelmsford years ago. There's a setup more like a true utility, kind of how Bill is showing you here today, where they really have staffed. They have crews that are doing, all of the field work, trying to keep a lot of that work in-house. But, and I think both options have kind of pros and cons in terms of how they're set up. But I do think, anybody you hire can provide a lot more value. Hopefully, but there's certain things that I think you're going to need outside support for too. So I think there's, definitely could be a deeper dive in kind of looking at those items.
So
Has there
it
been
sounds
any discussions in any towns about regionalizing these? I look at things like
Yeah.
overhead of billing, overhead of specialties, equipment, specialized equipment.
Yeah.
And it screams to me regionalization, right? If a city can do it with millions of people,
Yeah.
many towns should be able to do it that each have, 10 or 15,000. And then I think you drive to efficiency on things.
Yeah. No, and I know even with the task force early on, we were talking about opportunities for maybe sharing equipment between municipalities. And I was trying to look into that more to see if I could come up with an example. As far as the regional stormwater utilities, that's something that's been looked at, and I know Connecticut, they've done some studies looking at that, but nothing's been implemented yet, and we definitely don't have any regional utilities in Massachusetts, but at this point in time. But I wouldn't say it's definitely something other states are looking at and have implemented. So it's not, hopefully maybe at some point, like I could definitely see some benefit to that.
So I think there's a couple towns that you listed that have set up utilities that we have regional agreements with, right? Can we reach out to them and seek whether there is an appetite towards moving towards a regionalization of this?
I suppose we can, yeah.
Yeah, you said you talked to other towns and they said no.
So, well, yeah, to your question about sharing equipment with other towns. So when we renegotiated the intermunicipal agreement with Leominster for sewer, we requested to use their Vector truck maybe 2 weeks out of the year, and they just took that right off the table. They said, no way, the truck's not leaving.
No, but there's a difference between asking it after the fact and setting up a regional utility where both towns proportionally bought a piece of equipment and have lawyers sitting down talking about the rules and regulations associated with their usage, right? We have, our dispatch is regionalized, right? If you can regionalize dispatch of, first responders, I don't see why you couldn't regionalize a stormwater utility.
I kind of view his contract approach as a compromise rather than regional, or it might take time to regionalize something, but the contractor might work 3 months in Lunenburg, same contractor might go to a neighboring town, and the neighboring town, so that in a sense is sort of regionalizing without formally going through that process that you're describing.
Yeah,
It's a way of
if we could
sharing
go
equipment
full,
and sharing the labor without hiring somebody dedicated to that task, and other towns share that service.
yeah, I think these options you got to kind of think through, and can you fully, just outsource all of this? We don't hire a single person, we don't hire a single body. We give them the rules and the regulations for how to bill someone, and they just deal with it. And the homeowner will never pay more than $100, never, right? Pay more than $100. And then the rest of these big businesses will foot the rest of the bills. Because I do think that the $100 is like getting you in the door, and in 5 years from now, we'll be talking about our $600 utility bill, only marching towards a $2,000 utility bill, just like we saw with recycling, right? Recycling was going to offset the cost of trash in town, and now we pay $500,000 to recycle. So this is the problem with these kinds of things, in my opinion.
So you're saying there has to be a limit on how much the utility can raise rates on a yearly basis?
Can't hear, sorry.
There has to be a limit on how much inflation there is on this utility.
Well, Prop 2.5 to me is an awesome thing, right?
Yep.
This can go up no more than 2.5% per year.
No, I understand.
I don't, those are my thoughts on it, and those would form my recommendations for for setting up a single Lunenburg utility. The inefficiency factor is pretty high on it. And again, bringing on more staff that are fully burdened is also something I'm not really looking to do right now, in my opinion. Yep.
If we were to look at regionalization, we would still be paying for that, right? Like I'd still be paying either $100, either through taxes or some way, right? So no matter what, I'm paying $100 towards some sort of regionalization, or I'm paying $100 to a stormwater utility.
I'll be honest, I don't believe the $100.
And
I'll be
that's
frank
what
with
most towns are charging, and there are towns that haven't had a stormwater utility for a little while and haven't really gone up.
Yeah, I do live in a town that has a stormwater utility, and I've lived in the town for 7 years. They've had the stormwater utility, I think, a few years before that, and so we pay $60 a year, and it has not, hasn't changed.
For how many years?
7 years I've been there, yeah. And, you know, I would say most communities aren't changing the fee on an annual basis. You know, I've worked with communities that several years went by, they hadn't relooked at things. They're like, okay, it's definitely worth, you want to be relooking at it every so often, but I don't think any community, you know, and I haven't seen any, you know, changing it on any kind of annual basis. They definitely don't want to do that to residents, you know. I think they're very concerned about the, you know, the impact, you know, on any homeowner's budget on any type of fee. And so that's definitely, you know, not the intent.
And when we proposed the $100, we wanted to put a number out there that would not go up. So we're actually, if it's more likely to go down than it is, it's not going to go up over 100.
I just think that creating something like this there has to be a really good reason. And what you were talking about, well, this town's not going to want to fund it next year. That's not a good enough reason, because the town needs to fund it. We don't want to fund health insurance for the employees. Well, we got to do it.
Right.
This has to be educated to the town. This is one of the things that we have to fund. We don't sit there and go, like, we're going to line item $300,000 off DPW because, you know, we want to do this. Because we can't, because then, same thing with our streets. We talked about this last year. We wanted to cut down how much on the repaving, but people said, no, we wanted to maintain, you know, our streets. So it's an educational process. So if this doesn't add any value, this utility, add value to the town. Now, if it's regionalized, maybe that can happen. But if it by itself, it doesn't add value, it just adds additional complications. But if the only value is it's easier to get the money, I don't think that's worth it. And I think we should spend more time educating the town, and then deciding on how we spend our money.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I don't think any community goes into it thinking, oh, I'm going to slash stormwater costs first. You know, I think it's just, you know, budgets are so stretched thin, and there's certain other needs that, you know, might become more pressing, like with schools and stuff.
People paying the $100 or the $60 or $50 are the same people paying the $52 million for the town's budget. It's the same money. So we're just pretending that we're going to, this money over here, this little pile of money, this is different than this $52 million. It's not. It's all coming from the same people, pretty much. So I think we need to educate people, and when it comes to time meeting, when we're doing the budget, and we say we agree that we're going to fund this because we have to. And there's a lot of stuff that we fund because we don't like to, but we have to.
Yeah. And actually, the pavement was a great example because, you know, when our current town manager came in, she wanted to slash that. And everybody said, no, you're not doing that, because we actually have done a lot of work. Like, we actually had gone out at some point in the last 10 years. We borrowed money to catch up to it. And we made the commitment that we're not going to go back to that point. So I think, you know, I think the town has shown that we understand these things and we stay committed to it. And I think there's a lot of, I can see a financial structure that'll give Bill more flexibility and will avoid this complexity, you know, like the need for a future engineer for him, that not just someone who's going to spend, you know, some of his time in education entering billing, so that we can manage that. I see a lot of positives on another way, similar to how we did it with the fire department. Our fire department used to be on call only, and we made a plan to become fully, you know, fully staffed, and we did it with 3 shifts, and now we're committed to do a 4th shift, so that, and so this town at least, I can tell you, with living here 20 years, we understand these things, and we put our money behind it.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I guess, one more point on the stormwater utility too. I think, and I know we kind of touched upon this, Bill did during the presentation, but I think it just also offers a more equitable distribution in terms of how the fees are raised, right? We're talking about how there's certain properties that are exempt under, tax exempt. There'd be no one that would be exempt from the utility and,
I think we have 3 churches in town. We don't have a hospital. We don't have we don't have the Groton issue.
Yeah.
I think Groton that's probably much bigger issue because there's a lot of land there.
Yeah.
That's owned by 2 very large.
Well, what would be exempt? You're just saying,
Well, just under the utility, no property would be exempt.
what's exempt today, though, for the tax?
From property taxes, I guess I'm just thinking
Lunenburg would be church.
But you're not thinking
churches,
like
any
61A
nonprofits,
properties or anything like that, right? You're not talking like
No,
farm
because
properties and,
like open fields, I don't think they would be charged, right? Like a,
no, it's just if you have impervious surface area, would be
Right.
charged the fee. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, so I think, I guess it's just, thinking a little bit more about that. And like we said, there'd be that tiered structure for the large residential, commercial, industrial properties, so they'd be paying more in accordance with the amount of impervious surface area on those parcels. And when you compare that to the tax base, they do end up obviously paying a little bit more, and I think the residential properties actually pay less. So I think if you were to move forward with it through the general fund, you could we've done a little analysis, and I can certainly show you, what that differential might look like. But there is a little bit of a difference there, yeah. So maybe
to
not.
be honest, I'm not crazy about that. Like
Yeah.
Lunenburg has Unitil for electricity, which is the most expensive. I think last year I heard Unitil was the most expensive electric company in the country.
Yeah.
And I can believe that. Like, that is already a deterrent for business to come to Lunenburg. And I don't want to have a tax or a utility that Fitchburg and Limster don't have. Like, that for me, it's not necessarily a selling point because we have a
Yeah.
large undeveloped industrial zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to have another reason for them to not come to Lunenburg.
Right.
That's
No,
my
I understand,
personal
and that
opinion.
is definitely, a concern that different communities have brought up as well. I guess just one last point, I just want to mention too, so I know we talked about permit, the importance of compliance, just want to kind of reiterate that. I did have a meeting with a community today, an EPA, who was, behind on certain requirements, and so we met with EPA, talked about a timeline for kind of getting back into compliance. So I do just want to emphasize, obviously, EPA is out there meeting with communities, doesn't really want to find communities, but is trying to go other avenues first. But it's hard because I think communities just need the funding to be able to meet those requirements. And like I said, with this new permit coming out, they're definitely not getting less in terms of the kind of the financial, burden that's placed on communities, unfortunately. It is just, there's more implementation-based requirements, more prescriptive requirements, more construction, means more construction ultimately. And that, we know that's never cheap. So I think, and
so the current administration is rolling back a lot of the excessive regulations. Is this one that they might be looking at?
I haven't heard anything, like I said, I guess, I'll be honest, we didn't know what would happen when the new administration came out, but they've, this new draft permit's come out, they're moving forward. I'm hearing this permit's supposed to be final by the end of the year. So, and this is, again, this is a federal permit. Like Jen mentioned, it's a permit that every state, has communities that are covered under this permit. There's 251 communities in Massachusetts subject to this permit. So just Boston now has, Boston's a little bit different. They're a phase 1 community. They're a bigger entity, obviously, so is Worcester, but Boston has a utility now. So I do think that's, communities are moving toward a utility really at this point.
One just final thing is you may have the wrong year to try to put this forward, right? We've had a couple other initiatives last year that had a lot of support that failed to go forward because it was the wrong year. This may be another wrong year to go forward with this one. And then the argument of it's a fee, not a tax, is like, it's a distinguisher without there's no difference. It's a tax, right? You can call it a fee, you can call it whatever you want. It's a
Mitt
tax.
Romney tried that when he was governor.
Right. So I wouldn't go with that argument either. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and we can all be lawyers and look up in the dictionary, but this is a tax.
Yeah. I mean, I think anything we can do now just to get, provide more public education about water quality and all the benefits, I think is.
I agree with you.
But yeah, so hopefully, if anything, provide some more education in terms of that context
Yeah.
and stuff for the general public and the importance.
I'm in agreement, I think, with everything that's trying to be accomplished under what is this effort. I just don't think it's the right mechanism by which to go forward with it. That's my opinion. I think there's a lot of overhead burden associated with billing 5,000 residents under $100, collecting it. What do I do if they don't pay? Do we put liens on their house? Do we get lawyers involved?
Yeah.
For small dollars. I mean, it's just, I don't like that. Like, we kind of failed with the water department on billing properly, right? So there's just a lot that I think, I would look at other ways to do it personally, but I do appreciate you guys coming and getting in front of us early. I think the outreach is going to be important, not only in this forum, but other forums. So, any final?
Is there a timeline for compliance?
So with the permit?
Yes.
So when these permits come out, they're 5-year permits typically. The one that the town is currently covered under is an expired permit, but it was administratively continued. And there's a lot of requirements in that permit that are built in to extend beyond the 5-year period. Some of those go out to like a 10-year period, a lot of the IDD work and stuff. So once this new permit comes out, typically they like to align it with the municipal fiscal calendar and kind of give communities a little bit of an opportunity to kind of get their resources pulled together. And I'm hearing that's what they intend to do again. So it's hard to say, like, the way the draft permit reads right now, I think it says within, 90 days of that permit effective date, the town would submit another notice of intent like they did under the current permit to apply for coverage under the permit. And that, basically outlines everything you intend to do to kind of fully meet the permit requirements. And then, once that's accepted by EPA and you're given the authorization to discharge from your MS4, then, a lot of the requirements are very prescriptive. So it wants you to do certain things by a certain year in the permit. So one of the things that's been, was in the draft permit, for instance, was that, it wanted communities to have basically inspect all of their catch basins, right? Really take an inventory. It sounds like you're already doing a lot of mapping, but really do a condition assessment. They would like catch basins to meet the stormwater handbook standards and having like a 4-foot sump. A lot of catch basins don't have a 4-foot sump. And they were saying based on the catch basins that don't meet the requirements, they're saying 20% of those catch basins need to be replaced within a 5-year period. So, I mean, for a lot of communities, that was one of the big things, like, oh, wow, that's a huge cost to the community. How are we going to fund that? And they're adding it up and they're coming up with like $1 million. So there's some stuff that's really just staggering in that permit, and maybe that stuff will change with the final permit. There was comments allowed on the draft permit. So the general public communities comment on certain aspects of the permit. So it's hard to say what the final version will look like, but that was just one concerning, item. So,
Can you tell us at what level, what percentage of compliance we are presently at?
So I guess that's something I'd have to talk to Bill about a little further, since I'm not your MS4 consultant.
No.
So.
Bill, do you have an idea?
But I know we talked about sampling. Bill, you said you really haven't done much sampling to date.
Right.
At compliance,
Yeah.
level of compliance with the permit, what stage are we at? 50%, 75%?
So you're in permit year 8 right now.
Permit 8?
And
Correct.
You're saying you're not meeting, obviously, the catch basin street sweeping requirements.
Correct.
We could, would you say you're, 50% maybe, but are you more than that?
Yeah, a lot of the administrative stuff we've
Right.
done.
Yeah. And that's the other question I was going to ask you.
So how do you, what percentage is that compared to doing all the field work? I don't know. I don't know how to
balance.
balance that, yeah.
Yeah. And and I will say, like,
Maybe
it's
could
not like every community's
figure that out
100%
for us.
on a lot of this stuff. I think there's definitely a number of communities that, are behind on a number of areas, some more so than others, so, but there's,
We have administrative compliance, and then we have like field or operational compliance.
Yeah, there's a lot of field activities. The IDD investigations is a really hands-on field effort where you're isolating dry weather flow in your drainage system and all of your catchments, and you're collecting samples. And depending on how many samples you're collecting and what you're seeing, those costs can add up quickly. So that's one piece of it. And then, like Bill mentioned, obviously the catch basin street sweeping costs are extensive. And there's you have a phosphorus source identification report that you developed based on some of those impairments. So some communities, if they have certain water quality impairments, then there's even more extensive requirements. So like one of the things to think about is, so you discharge to the Nashua River, which has an impairment for phosphorus. Right now, there's no total maximum daily load. So that's an approved document, basically, that's developed by EPA and kind of outlines, how do we bring that receiving water back into meeting water quality standards? Like how much, phosphorus has to be reduced. And this is kind of what's been going on with like the Charles River. There's a TMDL already in place for that receiving water. So communities that are located in the Charles River watershed, I have a client who's in the Charles, only partially in the Charles, trying to implement what's called their phosphorus control plan. So EPA has told them by way of the permit that they need to reduce the amount of phosphorus being discharged from their MS4 by a certain percentage, which equates to so many pounds of phosphorus removal. And they get certain credit for certain activities like street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, or installing certain types of control measures that would infiltrate stormwater, and so they're getting so much removal. But it's a crazy amount. It's really a very big number, and the cost for implementation of that plan is extremely, extremely costly. Millions and millions of dollars over like a 20-year period. So you're at a point where you're kind of fortunate you don't have the TMDL yet, but if the Nashua River gets a TMDL, then you're going to have more of those prescriptive requirements as well. Right now, it's a little softer with that source identification report. So I know Bill mentioned that you already have kind of what was required, which was to design and construct a demonstration project. So it looks like you've designed something and it's going to be constructed this spring, but it's a lot more of that on a larger scale for compliance. So those are some of the things that communities are kind of grappling with for compliance. So it's definitely challenging.
Right. I want to thank you guys for coming. I know there was a little debate as to whether you wanted to come before us, but I do think it's very important for the dialogue to occur between the boards early.
So, Mr. Chair, a couple of final thoughts.
Yep.
I know you talked about the pavement management budget. That was cut by more than half this fiscal year.
Yes, and we agreed that last year there was a significant increase on your Chapter 90 funds, and part of that money was going to be used in your presentation to how you're going to use the Chapter 90 funds. We did get between what the town was funding plus the Chapter 90, we got to that number, so it was a level funded.
That's correct. I did use Chapter 90 funds, but just to clarify, the budget was cut. The discussion I heard sounded like it wasn't.
Chapter 90.
Yeah.
Maybe I heard it wrong.
Well, I guess it's how you see it, right? Like the town, like the state finally gives us more money, we gotta use for something. Why not use, the one thing that we value? And you're using a portion of that, not all of it, portion of that to supplement our pavement management.
I will say that I think the next few years is going to find us in difficult decisions as a town. In lacking a large override, we're going to have to be putting A versus B versus C on the map and, making hard decisions as a town. So I think the more we have the flexibility to do that is going to, be necessary. But was there another one too? You said a couple.
Oh, yeah. So Anna talked about the project manager doing billing. We're only planning on billing once per year, so it's not going to take too much time, So,
Can that be outsourced?
I suppose it could. I don't know any companies that do it. I'd have to look into that.
Doesn't the town do that now?
I would outsource the entire project to
Yeah.
one company to
Wow.
do everything personally, but
Sell the rights.
I would like
Sell
to
the rights.
remove the
Florida does.
administrative burden of billing from the town which is why I think just putting it in your regular taxes is the right way to do it, but, okay,
All right, that was it. Thank you.
okay. Anything else? This is a joint meeting, so if you had anything to.
No, does anybody else?
This is a plan that'll meet the requirements. Once you establish it, maybe we can introduce efficiencies as time progresses. There's nothing that says that we're stuck with that budget. I mean, he's going to be in charge of it. He's competent, so I'd like to think that as time progresses, it'll get more efficient. But right now, we're trying to grease the skid so we can establish it. And once it's established, things should get better, more efficient. That's my opinion.
I'll accept from the task force then a motion to adjourn, and we'll,
So moved.
second?
Aye.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
for having us here.
Thank you, and
Thank
thank you for staying late. All right, capital plan?
What's that? It's harassment, constant harassment.
Come on.
I actually, unbeknownst to people, I actually work 3 mornings a week at like very early, so.
Very early.
Accurate?
Very early
Thanks, Bill.
o'clock.
Thank you, Bill. Great,
Sorry, Bill, I love you, Bill.
Right,
All right.
does this look good?
Yeah, I think we're ready. All right, so good evening, everybody. I am going to give you a very preliminary capital plan. For the folks that are tuning in, I'm going to read the following disclaimer aloud. So the preliminary FY27 capital program has been transmitted to the Select Board and Finance Committee in accordance with Section 6-7 of the Town Charter, which requires the town manager to submit a capital improvement program at least 150 days before the start of the fiscal year. Under typical circumstances, the town's free cash would be certified prior to the submission. However, due to the transitions in the Finance Department, fiscal year 2025 has not been closed out, and free cash has not yet been certified. In order to meet the intent and timing requirements of the Charter, this preliminary FY27 capital program has been formed using a conservative estimate of free cash, which I will go over later in the presentation. However, once free cash is certified, additional meetings of the Capital Planning Committee are anticipated. In fact, one has been scheduled for next Wednesday evening, where there's going to be some discussions around initial reactions to this plan. This FY27 capital plan should be considered preliminary and subject to revision. So what I was proposing to do this evening is go over this plan as a high level, talk about where I hope that free cash might come in, and then discuss what makes sense for next steps so that the Finance Committee can get the department heads who have the proposals before you to answer questions, but I don't think it makes best sense tonight to go over details of the actual projects at any level. So quickly, what is a capital project? It's a tangible item that costs $20,000 or more and has a useful life of 3 years or longer, or it's groups of items of the same purpose that cost at least $20,000. For folks that aren't aware, next slide please, who is on the Capital Planning Committee. The Capital Planning Committee has a representative from the School Committee, which is Peter Beardmore, who also serves as committee's chair. Matt Brenner serves from the Planning Board. Chris Menard serves as your representative. Cesar Nuzzolo serves from the Select Board. And Rob Bowen serves as resident at large appointed by the town moderator. The Capital Planning Committee has been meeting since the fall. If anybody is interested in hearing those initial presentations, these are the dates that they met. So starting September 3rd through December 17th, when the committee met to vote on rankings. of the following projects. So, next slide, please. So a total of 22 projects were submitted for FY27, totaling $3,627,208. The bulk of those projects were under the DPW at $1,428,000, followed by the Facilities Department at $1,123,700, Fire Department at $335,000, Schools at $222,849, Police at $137,254, and IT at $20,405. Next slide, please. So the Capital Planning Committee evaluated and ranked jointly all of the projects, listed 1 to 22. It looks like maybe the right side of this chart got cut off, but from 1 to 22 are the rankings that the Capital Planning Committee developed, the individualized costs, and the cumulative costs. So I'm just going to for the edification of the public, I'm going to read quickly through these projects in order. So number 1, DPW, Flat Hill Road Bridge, engineering and construction, $350,000. Police is number 2 with a police cruiser replacement, $68,627. Fire, number 3 with a brush truck replacement at $335,000. Schools, 4, primary school entry and driveway expansion design, $25,000, followed by $30,000 design for the playground school, primary school playground design, followed by the public safety roof repair at $494,500. Public safety building boiler upgrades, $115,000. School door security intercoms at Turkey Hill and primary school, $29,044. Public safety controls, $35,000. DPW front end loader, $259,000. Adult activity center network upgrade, $20,405. Six-wheel dump with spreader and plow, $401,000. Primary school window safety film, $29,005. Mower replacement for the schools, $49,800. A one-ton dump truck at $93,000. A replacement fabric salt shed for the design of that and the permit for that, $200,000. Fitzgerald Field improvements, $55,600. Heat for the Turkey Hill Maintenance Garage, $60,000. Public safety flooring replacement, $38,600. New West Townsend Road drainage improvement design, $125,000. And TC Passios hazardous abatement, the asbestos abatement at $385,000. So if you see on the next slide, the preliminary capital plan for FY27 funds a fraction of those projects. It funds projects 1 through 4 in consecutive order, and then jumps projects 5 and 6, which were the playground design as well as a cruiser, and funds project 7, which was the public safety roof repair. And then it jumps again to number 11. And the reason why we jump from 7 to 11 is funding source, which I'll go over in a slide.
Do you want to comment now or at the end, or how about you, Chris? What was your...
I think if you have like general overarching kind of comments, let's keep them till the end. But if you have specific to like what's being talked about right now, you can ask them now.
It's going to be hard to differentiate between that.
I just don't want to have something where like I'm going to get to that kind of questions, so... But go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I think it's very wise to have skipped the primary school playground design for a couple reasons. And I know the school committee, there was some conversation about this yesterday. We need to first design the entryway because that will affect where the playground is going to be. Once that's done and we know where it's going to be, and maybe you don't even need to design, instead of doing a design build project for playground, you would just do a bid, design, and build. In smaller projects, that's a better way to do it because you're not breaking up cost on the design of a playground. I don't know who would apply it, but I know for a fact that most companies that sell playground materials, they do their own design. So if you have a pot of money, let's say you want to spend $200,000 on a playground, you just put an RFP out, or you can just get it through the state contractors and say, hey, build me a design, a playground for $200,000 that's going to go here, and they will do it. So that $30,000, it's a savings to not waste that money here. So I think it was very wise for you to do it. And Chris, if you could pass that information to the other members of the capital plan, because I don't think they realize that, like, it's one company. Do you have any experience with playgrounds about that?
I have had experiences with playground companies providing their own designers, as well as having the design from another firm done.
Right. So I think this is it's not a very extensive playground. It's for the primary. It's going to save us money by just doing a bid, design, build. Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, so historical capital program funding. I listed out the sources of funds and the total capital plan funding since FY17 forward. So the average capital plan is $1,287,612. You can see that varies quite a bit from low years of $619,000 to high years in FY23 at $2.1 million. The capital plan is typically funded with a combination of free cash, taxation, and unexpended prior year capital. You will see that the reduction in taxation, both in FY25 and FY26, does have an impact perhaps on the overall ability to fund the capital program. I want to put a pause right here on this and talk a little bit about that, $244,000. I think, as I was working on the FY27 budget, this is certainly an area that I was looking at to potentially no longer fund the capital program with any taxation and bring that funding into the operational budget. But it's clear, just putting this program together this year, why it's important to keep some taxation to fund the capital plan. And we don't, well, I'm going to go to the next slide. So let me just go there now. So for this year's capital plan, we have funded, what I have funded now is based on $700,000 in free cash. This is based on an assumption of $1.8 million in free cash, no transfers to the stabilization fund, and other expenditure assumptions that have been made around free cash. The same amount of taxation as FY26, which is less than average. There is no prior year capital projects being used to fund this year's capital plan, and using the special purpose stabilization fund at $594,000. So how did I come up with that free cash number? If you go to the next slide, I looked at a 10-year history of free cash, and the 10-year average is a little north of 1.6 million, with the 10-year median being 1.658 million, the 5-year average being 2.3 million, and the 5-year median being 2.27 million. I felt as though it was a safe bet based on what I do know to estimate 1.8 million at this time, with the hopes that we are closer to the 5-year averages and medians than we are to the 10. But we know that we had a significant turnback from the school department. We know that investment income has done well, and so that came in higher than anticipated revenues. So when we balance out, I hope that it's greater than the 1.8 million that I've estimated, but I do think that this is a conservative and safe estimate at this time. So next slide, please. to talk a little bit about the funding source that has been proposed in the past but never actually utilized, the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. So the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund was adopted at the May 6, 2017 annual town meeting with a purpose to fund future capital needs for vehicles and equipment. To date, there have been no transfers from the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. It requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting to make an appropriation out of this fund. The current balance is actually a little bit north of that 2.6 million. There's some interest to add there, but roughly $2,628,580. Next slide, please. Comments from the FY22 capital presentation. Plan on using the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund in years that have items such as a 6-wheeler, a 10-wheeler, or ambulances, unless there were sufficient funds through other regular sources. At that time, the current balance was $1.2 million, and the FY24 capital plan originally included $986,000 from the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund to replace Rescue 1, as well as 2 6-wheel dumps. ARPA ultimately stepped in to fund those projects. Next slide, please. So you'll see that there were a number of vehicles on that list of 22 projects that I did not fund. There was equipment that I did not fund in addition to the vehicles, and there's $2.6 million. So why did I not fund all of the vehicles and equipment that could have been funded? Well, if you look at these are from the out-year presentations that we've received from the capital planning committee process. These are just eligible purchases, large purchases. It doesn't include every vehicle on the out years, but the larger vehicles and equipment on the out years. And if we were to purchase in 2028 a rescue ambulance at $615,000, and if we were to purchase the fire engine from this fund in FY29 at $1.4 million, the fund would be depleted. So this was a fund that was created during the good years for these bad years to save in advance, and it is important that we try to fund at least that large engine in 2 years with this fund. So I want to preserve some of those monies, but also recognizing that we do need the vehicle equipment, and it is a source. So the projects then are on the next pages. I'm not going to go through the details of these projects this evening. I don't think it makes sense unless anybody has any specific questions. Anybody in the public that wants a copy of this, I'm happy to share that with them. But I think at this point, I think it makes sense to answer more general questions, and we can have the department heads in front of you.
I have one that just comes to mind. So you mentioned taxation averages about $532,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of been confused about one thing. So then you have like a potential $1.4 million Fire Squad 3 replacement in 29.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to do in-levy borrowing, is the fact that you're kind of plugging money from taxation a means by which we could actually do like a 5-year borrowing? I don't quite
Debt
understand
service?
how we would actually get back to getting to that, the debt service that we've just kind of no longer have.
The debt service inside the levy. Yeah, you could use the 244 to service that debt. You're then exchanging it for purchases of that current year capital.
I'm just afraid of like a trend where we're not you do deplete again that taxation to zero, and we're just continuously getting ourselves worse and worse on being able to borrow and do smart.
Inside the limit,
Yeah.
yep. So we didn't.
So like what I'm asking.
We didn't have the big decrease in debt service this year like we did last year. I think it was just tens of thousands of dollars, but there's not a lot left. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have close to $1 million at some point in that service that was inside the levy. And that money, as that money rolled off, our previous practice was to just woo-woo, more money, and we funded other things on the budget throughout the years, and no one ever caught that. That should have been, I mean, we're using for town stuff, but it's not a good financial practice because we're not talking about it. So I do appreciate the 244 being kept as like a special project.
And I don't know if, I see a really high couple years, FY '22 and FY '23 for taxation. I don't know if that was the thought at the time, and maybe it was just not articulated, but to purchase one-time capital with taxation so that you're preserving that hold in the operating budget.
Okay.
And what year did you say?
And in the 22 and 20, you said in the past, right?
Yeah, 22 and 23 on that historical capital funding.
Yeah, that's when some of the stuff was rolling off. But you can see before you came back, before you started, we had already used that, right?
Right, in FY '25, there was no taxation included at all in
Right.
funding the capital plan.
So I remember, I was not here, sitting here, but I remember talking about that quite a bit. Not in this scenario, but.
Yeah, so this is certainly a somewhat disappointing capital plan to be presenting. There are not a lot of projects on here, but there are a couple really high dollar, high priority projects. Flat Hill Road, we know, is closed. That is the #1 project universally marked by, I think, everybody on capital planning. And then that roof repair to the public safety building is at a substantial cost. And frankly, right behind that on the list is the boiler upgrades and replacements at the public safety building that I really would like to get funded. That is a occupational health matter at this point, and that will likely be my next priority if additional funds are realized through the free cash certification.
So I like the idea of using the stabilization fund, or at least thinking through that. But if we do look at the vehicles, you have we have $8.5 million over a 10-year period, which puts it, $850,000 on average of vehicle charges, not including, police and stuff like that. So that is a pretty big number per year that we're looking at over that.
Yeah, I think the intent, I imagine, at the time that the fund was created, that it was set up so that there could be some pay-as-you-go capital. I think, you've borrowed in the past for big trucks, and that may be we have these funds available perhaps for the next big truck, but then after that, we may need to be doing some borrowing for trucks after that.
And that actually shows how, I know we're in tough times. We just came back, or just coming out of really high inflation caused by a pandemic. But, we were here in 2010, 2011.
Yes.
We had a failed override for operational. That's when we borrowed money to purchase some of those capital items through borrowing. And then, not 10 years later, we got to be patient about these things. In 2017, we established the special purpose stabilization fund. We had a lot of cash. Capitalism, I always say, is a big Ponzi scheme because there's a bunch of ups and downs, and you got to be patient about it and not jump the gun and try to fund everything. It's just how it is. We didn't pass the override. We closed the school, and then we built a new school. Right. So we got to be patient about these things and not try to solve everything and not think that the world will fall apart if something you want is not being funded today.
Yeah, I just think you got a plan, though, for the.
Yeah, I didn't say that, yeah. I didn't say that. I'm just saying that what it is now is not what it will be in 5-8 years.
Yeah.
Right, and to that point, I was just talking to somebody the other day, as we're in these bad years, this is the time now to start planning for those projects. You plan for the projects while it's bad, you get the work done, because it is a cycle, it's just a matter of time.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
What's new growth at? Doesn't that contribute to free cash?
No, new growth doesn't contribute to free cash, it contributes to our operating budget revenue. And we have new growth estimated, I believe, at 400,000.
Unexpected new growth would translate.
Oh, new growth above,
Your estimate,
above actuals.
above estimate.
Oh, that number was from a couple months ago. I don't want to answer off the cuff. You might have this in an email.
I looked at too many numbers.
It was like, I want to say it was 100 and change over.
That's what I think it was.
It was, 160 is coming to my mind, but. Okay. I don't want to.
So it was estimated at 400.
And I think it came at
Between
like
everything.
560 or 506.
Yeah.
There's a 6 in there somewhere in my mind, but.
Right, and they are estimating the same thing this year.
But, and I think that if there are some market conditions that building starts going the way that it was going maybe more 3-4 years ago, that we'll see some positive revenues coming back. But right now, that's just, we're seeing a lot of additions and smaller projects. Anything else on capital?
Nope.
Am I doing my town manager's report now?
All right, Jen's going to read 15 pages to us.
Or she could give us her.
It's okay if you fall asleep.
I have nighttime reading for you. So my first item on the town manager's report is the introduction of Karen Barrett. So
Hello.
Karen Barrett is the town's new finance director, town accountant. She joined us last Tuesday, January 27th, and has jumped right into the role and has taken over responsibility for day-to-day operations. She served as town accountant in the town of Shirley, finance director and town accountant in Tewksbury, comptroller in Natick, assistant finance director and town accountant in Acton, and has served as an assessor. And she has a deep well of knowledge and is an adept Munis user. So I don't know if there's any other introductions other than that you'd like to share with the finance committee. Okay. All
You
right.
do have 2 Karen Bs, though.
Yeah, it's a problem. So, to that end, Finance Director reports to the Finance Committee. We would like to resume providing quarterly reports to the Finance Committee, beginning with FY26 Q3. The school business manager has also indicated that he would like to also provide quarterly reports to the Finance Committee. So if there's anything specific that the committee is seeking in that report, other than what would typically be provided as balances and aberrations and variances and the like, if there's anything specific that you'd like us to report on, we'd be happy to endeavor to fulfill that request. So having not appeared before the Finance Department throughout the process of the transitions within the department right along, I wanted to just kind of recap where we've been and where we're going in the department so that this committee has a good sense of things. So Ezekiel Ayala's last day with the town was on October 20th, 2025. On that same day, Catherine McKenna took helm as finance director. Within 48 hours of beginning in Lunenburg, Ms. McKenna began to indicate that she did not feel that the fit was right, which is why she never ultimately appeared before this committee for formal introductions, and her resignation was received on November 5th, and she officially concluded her service on January 2nd. At the time of transition from Mr. Ayala to Ms. McKenna, the town was also transitioning the positions of assistant town accountant, payroll and benefits coordinator, and the finance director town accountant position. So to support the various transitions, the town contracted with Eric Kinshirf CPA and his team in advance of Mr. Ayala's departure to provide external operational support during the transition. Very glad that we had Eric on with us during some key moments. It should be noted that having these 3 key transitions occur in such a short time frame has had an effect on the operations of the town, which have been felt by every town department, some more substantially than others. And while I do believe that stability is beginning to be restored, the effects of these transitions will continue to have impacts on the organization for many months. One area where of restored stability is in the position of the assistant town accountant. So the town has hired Jacqueline Thibault for the role, and she began with us on November 5th. In advance of this hire, the town contracted with Stephen Barrett, who we have previously contracted with, to provide AP processing services and to train the eventual hire of Jackie. Jackie is progressing nicely in the role despite various transitions and is highly resilient. Realizing that there may be a vacancy, as the town rehired after Ms. McKenna's announcement, we re-engaged the services of Karen Brochu, retired finance director, and gratefully she was willing and able to come back and begin assisting the town of Lunenburg on December 18th. Since her return, she's been able to provide assistance to departmental staff. She's served as interim director between directors, and she has taken ownership of the FY25 closeout process, which we're going to discuss in a minute. And with Ms. Brochu working to close out FY25 and Ms. Barrett working on day-to-day operations, stability is beginning to restore in this key position. One area that remains in flux within the department is the payroll and benefits coordinator position. With Nancy O'Rourke's retirement on October 31st, the town contracted with Robert Half Services to provide temporary payroll and benefit services. Richard Tomczyk is our contractor through Robert Half, and he overlapped with Ms. O'Rourke for several weeks before taking full responsibility for the role. The town has had difficulty in permanently filling this position and has conducted several rounds of interviews. A recent round of interviews was actually conducted since Ms. Barrett has been on board, and the town is conducting its diligence regarding those applicants. The payroll and benefits operations have not been smooth since Ms. O'Rourke's departure. Thus highlights the need for documented processes and protocols within this department. And once hired and trained, the new payroll and benefits coordinator will work with Ms. Barrett to develop those. The retirement of Ms. O'Rourke also highlighted the need for the school department to have more autonomy over their payroll. So thanks to Dr. Fortuna, Chris McNamara, Liz Peterson, and Penny Borneman. They have all been great partners in assuming this responsibility, and as of January have taken over the primary responsibility of processing payroll for the schools. So turning to FY25 closeout, this news has changed slightly since transmitting this earlier today for the positive, so slightly positive. The town of Lunenburg has not submitted its Schedule A and accompanying balance sheet for FY25 to the Department of Revenue's Division of Local Services. The Schedule A is due November 30th of every year. It's a year-end statement of revenues and other financing sources, expenditures and other financial uses, changes in fund balances, certain balance sheets, and other information. Failure to submit the Schedule A by November 30th may result in the Department of Revenue withholding local aid to a community, but that's not typical at that time of year. However, as time progresses, that withholding of local aid does become more real. So the town did receive a notification from the Division of Local Services that any communities that have not submitted their Schedule A by February 13th would begin to have their local aid withheld. I began to communicate with DLS regarding the town's operational position on January 20th, and on January 26th requested an extension of the February 13th deadline. And the update that is not printed before you is that since sending this to you today, I received confirmation from the Division of Local Services that we have been granted an extension through at least February 28th. So that's great.
Sufficient for you?
It's unknown at this time. We do have a meeting tomorrow to discuss what more we can do to make Ms. Brochu's closeout process go easier. We may need to request another extension. However, with the longer we go, the more real impacts it also has on our planning for town meeting. So it's critical to both Karen Barrett and I that we really endeavor to do whatever it takes to get this closed out if possible before that extension expires without having to ask for another extension. So it should be noted that last year, the Schedule A was not submitted until February 4th, 2025. In addition to the impact to local aid, obviously, free cash has not been certified. As I said, this has a direct impact to planning for town meeting items such as funding the capital plan, reserve transfers, funding the snow and ice deficit, and the like. I asked Ms. Brochu to provide me an update on the FY25 closeout that I shared with the Select Board earlier this week. It is attached to your report as well. But in this update, Ms. Brochu reports that she has reconciled the due to and due from accounts. Not all towns use them. Lunenburg does. They're used for enterprise, student activity, and trust fund accounts. In reconciling these accounts, she encountered errors such as one-sided entries, entries for the wrong amounts, and transposed numbers. With that process complete, she is now reconciling the warrant payable amounts posted to each account at year end. In this process, she has noted several errors, including payments that were originally entered as accounts payable, checks that should have only been adjustments to expenditure accounts, and adjustments posted for the incorrect amounts. After this step is complete, Ms. Brochu will turn to reconciling cash and receivables. She states that it appears that this process has not been completed since the close of FY24. I want to be clear that cash should be reconciled every 30 days, and I was under the information and belief that we were 3 months behind, not that it had not been done since Ms. Brochu left. Lastly, she will need to verify encumbrances and show activity on the funds for the current fiscal year. So the parts of the process that she is in now are manual, they're labor-intensive, tracking down when there's a transposed number or whether there's a variance. Is it an error or is it something else, right? So that's where we are with FY25 closeout. I want to be clear that this is serious, and this is not a good place for the town to be in. So that leads into our FY27 budget preparation. The FY27 budget cycle certainly is difficult under any circumstances. As discussed at the last tri-board meeting, some of the major cost drivers, health insurance, retirement assessment, school transportation, exceed the revenue growth, and absent service reductions and override is likely required. This reality requires the presentation of clear and accurate information to stakeholder groups such as yourself, select board, school committee, and most importantly, to the public. So while preparations are underway on FY27, we still have quite a lot that we're dealing with on the back end that we shouldn't be dealing with at this time. So we are working to establish a baseline and confirming a level service budget. We recognize that there's an understandable interest and desire in receiving this information as soon as possible to support decision-making and discussion, but that must be balanced against the accuracy and integrity of the data. We are endeavoring to get these level service figures pulled together prior to next week. However, we cannot state with certainty that a preliminary budget will be completed by your meeting that we have tentatively this scheduled for next Thursday, although we are trying. So, now to budget presentations to you from departments. You can either answer tonight or you can follow up, but this is a request to the Finance Committee. So in preparations for the presentations to you, department heads are specifically seeking input from the Finance Committee as to its expectations. In discussions with the chair, Mr. Menard has expressed a desire for the following information to be included with all of the presentations: a summary of key services, functions, and duties of the department, a high-level presentation on what is their status quo and any deviations from the status quo that are being proposed, any available funding sources outside of taxation to support departmental operations, and an organizational chart for each department. If there are any other requests for types of information that the committee would like to see in the presentations, please communicate those requests to me as soon as possible. In addition, if you have any questions that are specific to a department based either on what you have already received from the tri-board process or what you will be receiving, please communicate those questions in advance through me and Ms. Barrett so that we can endeavor to have those addressed in advance. The department heads did express a desire to want to be able to get as many of your detailed questions in advance so that they can give you a educated response when they appear before you. Yes?
Can I give you one of these?
Yes.
I brought this because I started working on this. and I was going to talk with the group about it. But this is something that I've seen in other towns where it is, we can do it in 2 phases. But I have a lot of questions that sometimes I know when they are presenting here, I have the questions and they come with their presentations and they don't have the answers. So I started organizing my questions in this document. And what I've seen in another town is that they usually get a document like this prepared and they put the name of the person who's asking the question and they send it to the department prior to their budget presentation, and they answer those questions. And they answer written, and they also come prepared with that. The one nuance is, like, we are going to start having presentations next week, is that correct?
No, not from departments. The following week, I believe.
Okay, because a lot of the questions that I would have, it might be like, anyway, it could be related to the budget. So if we can do one where I just know my questions because I was here last year, and, when people can give me their questions and I can add it, and we can send it to you. And if we have the budget, then we can look at the budget ahead of time and have those questions and then submit it ahead. So if the group wants to do this, I'm happy to be the one receiving the questions for every department and compiling them, because I already started doing it for myself, and send it to her. But this is something I would like to do for myself, because last year I very much felt that way, that I had a lot of questions, but it's not that the department heads were unprepared. It's just they didn't know I was going to ask for specific data, specific documentation, and so forth. So, so that's
It's like I didn't know off the cuff what the actual new growth was, But yes, it's that kind of.
So I don't know if that fits with what you and Chris talked about it.
I think it does. I think it does, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think my reasoning for the questions on here is we just went through the tri-board meetings where every department kind of laid out what their goals were, what additional things they may be asking for or not. So I don't think we need to recap what we did in the detail through the summer months. But what are the differences from that, and what are the results so that's kind of how I formulated those with.
That's really good, but in those presentations, I didn't go into the details that I normally would in a budget presentation. And that's why my questions are here.
I mean, I think if you have other questions, like you said, and if you want to be the one that others can funnel them through, I would accept that wholeheartedly. And I think that anyone presenting would rather have questions asked to them prior to their presentation than.
This was their request to you from the department head meeting.
And that's my request too, is to actually.
Same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I feel that over the 6 years that I've been doing this, a lot of the department heads have kind of keyed in on the questions I've repeatedly have, so they've kind of baked it into their presentations. So I don't know that I personally will be funneling any through you, but I think certainly with the detailed questions that you often ask, that is a great mechanism by which.
Yes, I tend to ask her a lot of detailed questions and, understanding and so forth. So, yeah.
So what would be your proposed
Timeline.
Like a week before?
If you can start getting them to me, if you want to get them to me in piecemeal, and we can do tranches of questions and get them out, that's fine.
Okay, we can coordinate so I guess my first question for you is, when are we going to have some kind of budget to look? Because that would be part of a lot of questions I would have. It's on that.
That's what we said. We're endeavoring to have that level service done by next week. I just can't promise that it will be done, but.
Okay, and our first department presentation is when?
Public schools.
NIT, right?
NIT.
And that's what.
So we're really throwing everything in. They're going first this year, public schools. Well, Monty Tech went first, but.
Yeah,
and then public schools.
Okay, I mean, funny because the public schools already have 2 pages of this for me.
You have more than that.
Oh, I'm going to have way more than that, yeah. I'm doing research and all that, yeah.
No, I think that that's a great way of doing it. So
Yeah.
they're on the 19th.
The 19th, okay.
Today's the 5th.
So your budget is going to include the schools fees?
So I have a budget from the school from, the last budget that I have received from the school is the January 16th version of the budget. What I understand is that that's their level service budget, and so it will include that. I do not have their budget that is beyond level services.
Okay, level service, okay.
I mean, I think we're going to have a lot of detailed questions, but I think we're going to have a lot of high-level discussions this year, right? Because we've already talked about additional needs that some departments are asking for above their level services, right? Fourth shift, the school needs, others. We've had discussions about where we may need to make changes that you've brought up in the past, like the recycling and maybe mosquito and other things, dealing with buildings that are falling apart, and then we're going to have to, find where there might be some efficiencies in the budgets as well. So those are going to be kind of high level, I think, large number type discussions as we lead towards whether we propose a override in how many and to what extent.
I imagine just by the nature of this particular budget, that this FY27 budget is going to be somewhat more malleable than it traditionally is as we squeeze it and push it and pull it, trying to get as close to we can within.
It's always malleable. You have like 30 budgets one year.
We're not doing rainbow budgets. Okay, so.
So why don't we say, though, that, let's endeavor to have the questions to the departments the week before the presentation.
And if you want to send them in chunks.
Well, I was
Does that make
hoping,
sense?
so I'm hoping that I would have all the questions, all the questions to them and all at once. I didn't think that this would be a multi-week project. It's really, if you have specific questions that you'd like answered, give me your questions over the next
week or so.
Well, you said.
Well, because you have some initial questions, right? People might have some initial questions
Sure.
based on what you've heard so far. If you want to get those in a week or so, and we'll get those initial round of questions done, and then as you see the budgets, respond with follow-up questions or additional questions.
And you don't mind that?
Nope.
To receive multiple, okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So everyone's clear, you'll funnel those through Anna. You can CC me if you'd like, but just send them to Anna, not everyone. And if she doesn't get them, she doesn't get them.
What do you mean, if I don't
If
get-
someone doesn't send you something.
Oh,
they
okay. Yeah, I mean,
send
if
you
they don't, it's just an opportunity for me to ask specific questions and for the person on the other end to be prepared.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay, so the town meeting warrant. So the warrant for the May 2nd town meeting is open through March 16th. All subjects for the warrant must be submitted by that date. In addition to the slate of standard articles, I understand that the Bylaws Committee will be meeting with several groups on some upcoming articles, specifically the Trust Fund Commission has, I believe, 2 articles that they're considering, and the Open Space Committee has 1 article. The Select Board has also discussed articles relative to some small funding for the 300th Anniversary Committee, Notice of Town Meeting, and Kids Kingdom, which they will be discussing with the School Committee. Based on the town's financial condition, there may be additional discussions around the town's participation in the Central Mass Mosquito Control Program. I've attached that assessment paperwork to this packet. The FY27 assessment is $91,562. And so that does require a town meeting vote to both enter the program and to exit the program. So that's why it may come up as part of town meeting warrant, and potentially the funding around the recycling program. I'm not sure what that might look like, but I know that that is being discussed. So I have not heard too many other articles that are being proposed other than these in the stormwater. But I'll keep the committee updated.
Just one comment on the 16th, like, our public hearing is the 19th, and
So the 16th is the date not for the final warrant. The 16th is the date that all subjects are submitted to the select board. Depending on the status that those subjects come in and how close they are to final form, I don't know that the select board will or will not be voting to approve a warrant on the 17th. Certainly, the earlier that folks get their articles in and that we can get them through council if they need revisions, the easier that process is.
yeah, it leaves, we really need to have seen the articles and deliberated on the articles prior to a public hearing. So I think the end of this schedule is a little
Well, I think that,
difficult to navigate through.
you know, frankly, I think that the March 19th date is a little aggressive for a public hearing without knowing what could be coming in on the 16th. So depending on, if we get citizen petitions on the 16th, that's the date that they have until they can bring them. So I can't guarantee what we're going to have. I mean, we have, the warrant gets drafted, vetted by council early on, but things can change, and I can't guarantee that they can't. So, in an ideal world, the warrant will be done and nothing was going to come in late, and the select board can vote the warrant on the 17th. But I've been trying to, I believe you've been CC'd on any articles that I've received so far?
You've sent me one and I've forwarded it on, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's wise to do, of course, yep. We
So
just
I'll
need
keep-
time in order to
Yeah,
deliberate.
I'll continue to CC you as you get them. I mean, some of the articles, the language may change in some legal, technical manner, but the intent you are able to discuss and deliberate on in advance.
Yep.
All right. So, snow and ice deficit spending. So we are officially deficit spending for snow and ice. Under Massachusetts state law, this is one of the few areas where a community can deficit spend, provided that the snow and ice budget is equal to or greater than the prior year's appropriation. As of January 30th, there have been 18 events. The snow and ice budget is $355,571.39, and to date, we have expended $523,418.07, or 147.2% of the budget. We have quite a lot of winter left to go, with a lot of cold temperatures. This deficit is funded often with free cash, and so how big this deficit is in comparison with our certified free cash certainly speaks to funding availability for other projects and programs with that free cash. The fire department shift change proposal, there is a forum on that for folks that might be interested in hearing what that's about. It's for this body, it's not going to be very dissimilar from what you heard last summer, but for the public, January 23rd, it's a Monday at 5 p.m. at the Eagle House Adult Activity Center, on the proposal to transition from the 48-hour shifts of 3 to 42-hour shifts of 4. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions about why and how and
January or February?
February. Thank you, Jay. We're not going back in the time machine. I did that to the select board, too. Didn't make that correction here. All right. So, TC Passios building operating costs. You have a memo attached on this as well, from Chris Ruth, the facilities director. The school department officially vacated TCP last summer. At the time, the town took full control of all operations save for landscaping and snow removal, which the town will take full responsibility of at the beginning of this fiscal year. The operational and maintenance costs for this building are roughly $120,000 that have not been appropriately budgeted. And in addition, revenues have declined with the extended day program no longer renting the space. As you're aware, with the school department vacating the building, facilities began decommissioning roughly 50% of the building with a hope for an associated 50% cost reduction. That has not been realized. So as an example, since the partial decommissioning, we've only realized a 20 to 22% in gas usage. In response to hearing this information, I asked the facilities director to prepare a memo of the costs and operating budget of the building based on what he's seen since the decommissioning. That is the memo that's attached. Based on that memo, I have started to reach out to users of TCP building to begin to discuss the concerns around the long-term sustainability of operating TCP, meeting with stakeholders beginning tomorrow, with the remainder of the key stakeholders meeting on Monday to begin to engage around the potential wind down of remaining operations in the building. Don't know what that means or when, but just flagging this as there's substantial carrying costs of that building that are not making sense.
Who's in the building?
So we have in the building, there is, the one person that I'm not speaking to is a licensee, and that's Shapiro. So Shapiro rents 4 classrooms from us under a license agreement. For town user groups, we have, the town clerk has elections in the building and also stores election materials. Meeting with the town clerk tomorrow about the discussion about potentially moving to the schools to hold elections. The recreation uses some classroom space for programming. There's also use of the gym by recreation, outside groups, adult activity center, teen center, the food pantry.
That's, I mean, those uses are nice,
Right.
and I support, like, I'm helping that happen now, but it's very minimal. It's like 2 hours. The paid programs is like 2 hours a day, maybe 3 hours.
The volleyball and
The
indoor
volleyball,
pickleball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not.
In addition, there's obviously the food pantry, has a large presence in the building, and PAC, cable access.
I think the ones you're probably going to have a
Ca-
conversation with is
Cable
PAC
access and the food pantry.
and the food pantry.
Yep, those are the two, those will be the two more challenging potential moves that we'll have to negotiate and work around. And I don't know, without having those initial conversations, the ease or feasibility for either of the groups to move. Might have conversations on Monday and find that there's an alternative arrangement that could be easily realized with a neighboring community by renting space for their cable access, or maybe not. But, and with the food pantry, without initiating that conversation on Monday, I don't know what options may or may not be available to them. Clearly, this is a sensitive topic. I recognize that. However, I cannot, with the face of this data before me, I cannot not at least begin these discussions. I just said about 6 double negatives.
I will say I
At quarter of
support
11.
you wholeheartedly in this. I mean, I think we got to find accommodations to the extent possible, but we can't continue to carry $120,000 in basically throwing money away costs.
And to add to that, it's not only the $120,000 in the operating costs. There are substantial deferred maintenance issues in that building, that the roof has substantial deferred maintenance. The boilers are really old and oversized. Like, there are needs in that building that if some system goes down, we are having this conversation anyways, and I don't know that it makes sense to put more money into that structure at all at this point.
It doesn't. I think the town has made it clear that it does not want to keep that building, and, which is okay, but now we're just throwing money, like we're flushing money down the toilet. And we have a long history of doing that. Like the primary building, the one that we did.
I never got to see it.
I know, we closed in 2005, like we decommissioned for the school year of 2005. I don't think we demolished into 2018 or 19, right? It was,
After
it
that,
was,
I think,
it was
like 2 years
insane.
ago, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was going to be
it was like
senior
a couple
housing. We waited like almost 8 or 9 years for them
And it was
to do
full of
that.
rats.
Right.
Yeah, they
And the
closed it.
funding went away, and
Right, we just gotta stop wasting money, and that's.
I think Chris's first order of ranking on the capital plan, he was the only one, so he ranked it number 2.
Was what?
Was the abatement of the building, the hazmat, the asbestos abatement, just to get because you're going to have to pay for the asbestos abatement no matter what you do with the building, whether you renovate or demo it, and
I agree with that.
so.
I want to be able to go over Flat Hill Bridge again, so.
We all need that project to be done. All right. So I'm gonna turn to something that I want to start hearing from Chris last night, speaking at the school committee forum, where I'm going to start reporting this to the finance committee. Recent grant applications, we have 2 recent town grant applications. Bill Bernard submitted a community culverts grant application in the amount of $150,000 to support the design phase of the Goodrich Street culvert over Easter Brook. So this is a culvert on Goodrich Street that has had some flooding issues. If this were to ever be compromised, there would be a substantial 5.25-mile detour required. So we think that we have a decent shot at this application based on what they look for, and he completed this application together with the assistance of TEC Engineering, and we are hopeful that this will get funded. I also submitted an application actually this morning for the Community Compact IT Grant Program with the assistance of Casey Chisholm, who you know from Suzer IT, and that was for that FY27 capital project for $20,405 for the infrastructure upgrades to the Adult Activity Center that is unlikely to get funded within the FY27 capital plan, but this may be a place for it to get funded. And that's to fully upgrade the network at the center, new firewall switches, new Wi-Fi access points, including Wi-Fi points outside, so that the pavilion and exterior area would also be online. Their priorities for this grant program were ADA compliance around website accessibility guidelines, but with the low monetary value and the related accessibility for seniors with Wi-Fi and computing, I hope that they'll be able to fund it. And lastly, I just want to clarify the statement that I made at the January 27th Tri-Board meeting. I made a statement concerning a community where a fire department was facing layoffs and folks were losing their homeowners insurance. Those statements were around the town of Dudley. Dudley underwent multiple failed override attempts in 2023, and during that time lost both call and career staff, and as a result was taken off of departmental area run cards. Ultimately, the override passed and services were restored. However, my inaccuracy in my original statement, I said folks were losing their homeowners insurance. Rather, the correct statement is that staffing levels can influence a community's ISO rating, also known as the Insurance Services Office rating, and the ISO rating affects homeowner insurance rates, not whether or not they have homeowners insurance. So thank you for...
It made me worry with that comment, because that did happen to my mother-in-law.
And that's about wind at the Cape, that wind insurance.
Yeah, but but it is a real thing. It can, it made a huge difference, so, I hope you know what I was really following up.
Nope, and then I said, oh, geez, I don't like to misspeak, so I want to be clear. That's the end of the soliloquy.
Yay.
So
Thank you for this.
I'm sorry for all the negative news, but I thought that this was a good opportunity to kind of fully brief the committee on the status and changes, and hopefully that we're on the other side of this.
Thank you for putting these grant applications in here. One of the other things we talked about last night, which was at the school forum, a few of us were there, was reporting on grants, but also reporting on line item transfers. We wanted to see just a summary of the line item transfers that are going on. And then when we receive grants, how that affects
Operations.
Operations and what it was assumed at the time that budgets were coming out. So those were a couple of the comments that were made last night that I think.
I think in general, town-focused grants tend to be a little different than school grants. We typically don't fund operations with grants. They're grants are usually available for town functions that are nice to have or that you can't always fund, but certainly we'll provide that in our
Okay,
report.
and then the other one I think that's important is on our capital projects, just the status of where we are on all of them. Because sometimes you look back and you're like, yeah, we had a capital project from like 20 years ago, and we still haven't done anything on it.
Okay.
So I don't know if there were other thoughts on what could be in a
Regular
quarterly
reporting.
report.
Well, if you think of any, you know how to
Honestly,
reach us.
like, we haven't really had any since Karen Brochu was here, and when Karen Brochu gave them, a lot of times it was verbal.
Okay.
It was hard for me to kind of follow, I will say that.
And I think too, we know we have a lot of members of the public who tune into these meetings as sources of information, and especially when they're online and they're watching them afterwards, to have the PowerPoint available so they can follow along with the numbers. It does make it a lot easier.
Okay. But best practice is probably a good starting point on that.
Have we thought about making the documents that are part of our packets, FinCom and Select Board, available on the website with the agendas? Because sometimes, I see these documents, they're shared and they're talked about it, and I like to read stuff, so.
So communities typically don't put their entire meeting packets online. Some do, but it is actually one of my favorite meeting packets. If you ever want to see a great meeting packet, Provincetown, Massachusetts. I love the way they do their meeting packets. They're numbered, they're organized, they're beautiful.
Let's aim for that.
So I think, it's a labor. It's a matter of labor, and it's a matter of making sure that the information that you have out, it's just another step. It's just
I mean, some of the stuff can even be done afterwards, I know the school committee,
Yeah, should be included with the minutes, anything that's presented.
technically, yes.
So
There's
for
just
something
a
like
link.
this with the minutes, where I've given you a printed report, it's very easy for the minute taker to just say, see attached, and then attach this and the other documentation to the minutes. That's,
But-
Or a link to the.
they're just not as contemporaneous as the meeting sometimes.
Right. But the school committee, they don't do for all of them, and sometimes I have to email them and say, hey, that report you shared last night, can I take a look? But afterwards, they just add to their website.
If there's any entity that wants to send to Kara, this is the package of information that we want you to post about our meeting, she will do that.
So we talked about that a little bit yesterday as well, as the information exchanges not only to the public, but between boards. And the fact that a lot of times it's email, it gets lost, it's not stored well. I think that there are things that maybe Casey could help us with on setting up workflows that would enable, if you're presenting something to us, to drop it into a workflow. It comes into our meetings, it gets archived properly, and then could workflow out into a public-facing SharePoint type situation. So I think that there's ways of doing this that would make a lot of people's lives easier. There's it's hard to work in this town, like reserving rooms, getting Zoom numbers.
Well, that's
posting
different than
agenda.
what you're talking about.
But it's not. You should start a workflow, I need a meeting, and it immediately gives you the conference room options. It gives you a Zoom number, it sets up an agenda, it sets up the need for minutes, it goes through an entire workflow. That's the way.
I understand your request. I want to center us on where we are right now. In the context of everything that you heard tonight, it is something that we can endeavor towards. It is not something that we can take on.
I will also tell you that there are many days I'm ready to quit this position because my ability to get onto Zoom and prepare for a meeting at the last minute as a volunteer is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
So trying to be a chairman of a board in this town, working through all sorts of groups and all of these antiquated processes is an extremely difficult thing on a volunteer.
I understand. I understand. There are many organizational deficiencies in the town of Lunenburg. Many organizational deficiency in the town of Lunenburg. We have capacity to deal with the most pressing and salient ones one at a time. Right now, the biggest issue facing the town of Lunenburg is the stability in the finance department office. We have got to close FY25. We have got to get FY27 budget prepared. You just heard me talk earlier tonight about the payroll and benefits position, how there's no procedures and policies and things written down. We have to get to all of these things, but we have to prioritize and make decisions around each and every one of them. The Zoom issue, I think that that's going to be resolved very shortly.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but like, this issue that I just brought up has nothing to do with finance department. Has nothing to do with town manager.
But it does.
It's something that could
It does.
just go.
It does because it takes my management. It does because it takes my capacity. Every single thing, it
It
does.
doesn't have to.
I respectfully disagree.
And this is why we.
I get it.
No, don't interrupt me.
She looked at
No,
me and I
listen.
told her I get it. I'm not interrupting you, so let's not get.
No, you are interrupting me.
She looked at me and I acknowledge her.
This is why we don't have a personnel department. This is why we lack people stepping into roles.
Respectfully, it's 11 o'clock PM, Mr. Chairman. I don't think that this is productive, and I'm going to ask to be excused from this meeting.
Just ignore it.
I'm not ignoring it.
No,
Everything.
everyone in this town ignores the volunteers. And all I'm saying is that I have been asking for this for 4 years, and it's always some other issue that comes up. We need to make my life easier as a chair. We need to get information out to the public. And there's gonna be problems in town, but we have hundreds of employees in this town that can solve these problems.
We don't have hundreds of employees in this town who can solve these problems. We have one person who handles our IT and our website. She is currently right now building out a whole page for the FY27 override. She has to be able to have a place to present this information.
So with that.
Are we having an override? No one, who's made a decision on an
I would like to
override?
make a motion to adjourn at 11 and 10:57.
I don't accept it.
Well, I make a motion.
All right,
I make a motion to adjourn at 10:57 PM.
I second.
Okay? You have a motion, we have a second? All right, I'm leaving. Anna Lockwood is leaving at 10:57 PM. And I don't appreciate getting yelled at it.
I don't appreciate being interrupted.
Oh, Chris, we interrupt people all the time.
All right,
so
whatever.
keep going.
Anna.
All right, I think that's enough for tonight. It's late, people getting frustrated.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. You guys may need a fucking.
I understand your frustration, Chris, I know. Being on Zoom can be a bit.